Hi guys, and welcome to Quiet Voice Podcast channel. Tonight we're stepping into Edinburgh in the winter of 1854, where snow gathers softly on rooftops, stone steps, narrow lanes, and the dark shoulders of the old city. You stand beneath a pale night sky, while flakes drift through the yellow glow of street lamps. Above you, the castle rises from its ancient rock, stern and quiet, as though it has been watching the city breathe for 1,000 years. The air smells of coal smoke, damp wool, cold stone, and distant cooking fires somewhere nearby. A carriage wheel scrapes over frozen ground somewhere farther away. A door closes with a heavy wooden thud. The city is not silent, but every sound seems wrapped in snow. So, before you settle into the story, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. And as you grow comfortable, share where you are listening from and tell us your local time. Perhaps it is late evening where you are, or perhaps dawn is already beginning beyond your window. Now it's time to rest. You draw your coat more tightly around you and begin to walk. Snow touches your shoulders and settles along the brim of your hat. The cold reaches your cheeks first, then your fingers, then the tips of your ears, with the quiet determination of a Scottish winter that has no interest in negotiation. The year is 1854, and Edinburgh is a city of striking contrasts. It is famous for learning, medicine, law, literature, and philosophy, yet it is also crowded, smoky, uneven, and deeply divided by wealth. Grand terraces rise in one direction, while cramped rooms fill old buildings in another. Beauty and hardship stand side by side, apparently too polite to acknowledge one another. You move along a street where the stones shine beneath a thin layer of ice. The snowfall softens the edges of everything. Chimneys blur into the darkness. Rooflines become gentle white slopes. Iron railings wear delicate caps of frost. Records confirm that Edinburgh has long been shaped by its position between the castle rock and the surrounding ridges. Its steep streets and narrow passages are not accidents of poor planning. They grow from the land itself, forcing generations of residents to build upward, inward, and wherever space allows. Your boots press into the snow with a slow, satisfying crunch. A lamp burns above a doorway, its flame trembling behind glass. Gas lighting has already transformed parts of the city by this time, though darkness still gathers quickly. In corners of stairways and enclosed court, the light does not conquer the night, it merely creates small islands within it. You pass a man carrying a covered basket beneath one arm. He keeps his head lowered against the wind. A woman in a thick shawl hurries across the street, lifting her skirt just enough to avoid the worst of the slush. A boy appears briefly beneath an archway, then vanishes as though the city itself has swallowed him. No one lingers without reason. The cold has a way of making every journey seem urgent, even when the destination is only a nearby doorway. Your mind drifts toward the people sleeping behind the walls around you. Families share rooms to preserve warmth. Servants settle in narrow quarters near kitchens or upper floors. Shopkeepers sleep above their businesses. Lodgers rent beds, corners, or small chambers according to what they can afford. Privacy in many parts of the city is something enjoyed mainly by the wealthy. Oddly enough, some residents believe that keeping bedroom windows firmly shut throughout winter protects health, even though stale air and coal fumes may make the room far less pleasant. Fresh air is viewed with suspicion by many people, especially at night. Cold drafts are treated almost like invisible villains, sneaking under doors and plotting against the lungs. You may smile at the idea until another gust finds the gap between your collar and your neck. Then the old fear begins to seem rather reasonable. The snow thickens. It moves sideways now, driven by wind that slips through the narrow street. You hear the faint creak of a hanging sign above a closed shop. The sign swings forward, pauses, and returns, repeating the same tired complaint. Nearby shutters are fastened from within. A final customer steps out of a small tavern, pauses to steady himself, and then decides that the street is moving more than it really is. He chooses a direction with great confidence and immediately walks in the other one. The city offers many forms of education. A church tower rises through the whitening air. Its outline appears and disappears behind the snow. You hear a bell, deep and measured, marking the hour. The sound travels across roofs, courtyards, chimneys, and sleeping rooms. It reaches rich houses and poor lodgings alike. For a moment, everyone belongs to the same hour, yet scholars continue to disagree about how fully industrial growth improved daily life in cities like Edinburgh. Some point to expanding trade, better transport, stronger institutions, and new forms of employment. Others emphasize crowding, pollution, illness, and severe inequality. The truth seems to move between these views, much like the snow between the lamps, visible for a moment and then lost again. You turn into a quieter lane. Here, the noise of the larger street fades. The walls stand close on either side, their stone surfaces dark with age and moisture. Snow gathers in window ledges and along shallow steps. A faint smell of baking bread escapes from somewhere behind a basement door. The scent is warm, simple, and almost painfully comforting. You imagine the loaf being lifted from an oven, its crust darkening, its center soft with heat. Perhaps it will be eaten with broth, cheese, butter, or nothing at all. In winter, even plain food can feel like a private celebration. Your pace slows. Above the rooftops, the castle remains visible whenever the snow briefly clears. It stands on its black volcanic rock, massive and distant, with walls that seem carved from the night itself. From this angle, it does not look like a place built by human hands. It looks like part of the earth, raised upward to watch over the city. The sight steadies you. You continue beneath the drifting flakes, listening to your own footsteps and the quiet breathing of Edinburgh around you. Smoke rises from chimneys. Lamps flicker behind curtains. Somewhere, a kettle begins to boil. Somewhere else, a child is being told to settle down beneath a heavy blanket. And somewhere ahead, beyond one more corner, a warm room waits. The road rises gently beneath your feet, drawing your attention toward the castle that crowns the dark ridge above the city. Snow clings to the jagged rock and gathers along the outer walls, making the fortress appear both heavier and more distant. A few lamps burn near the gates, their small flames barely troubling the vast winter darkness. You pause where the view opens. From this angle, Edinburgh Castle commands the skyline with complete confidence. It sits upon Castle Rock, the remains of an ancient volcano, lifted high above streets, roofs, and chimneys. The cliff face falls sharply on several sides, giving the fortress a natural defense that generations of soldiers, rulers, and anxious officials have greatly appreciated. Building a stronghold there was almost unfair to anyone expected to attack it. The wind reaches you without obstruction. It carries the smell of frozen earth and chimney soot. Fine snow strikes your coat with a faint dry tapping, like fingertips brushing heavy cloth. Somewhere on the slope, a loose shutter knocks twice, pauses, and knocks again. The castle seems still, yet it is not empty. In 1854, soldiers remain stationed within its walls. Sentries keep watch, gates are controlled, and military routines continue through the winter night. Edinburgh may be celebrated for books, medicine, and polite discussion, but the fortress above it retains the firm habits of command. Orders are given, boots cross stone courtyards, and lamps are checked against the cold. Records confirm that Castle Rock has been used as a fortified site for many centuries. Its position makes it one of the most important defensive locations in Scotland. Armies have contested it, kings and queens have occupied it, and prisoners have waited within its guarded buildings. By your winter evening, much of that turbulence has passed into history, yet the place still carries the mood of vigilance. You picture a sentry standing near the outer defences. His greatcoat is buttoned high. His breath appears in brief clouds. He shifts his weight from one foot to the other, not because regulations encourage fidgeting, but because frozen toes have their own chain of command. He watches the dark approaches below, where no enemy army appears, only snow, smoke, and the slow movement of ordinary citizens returning home. The city beneath the fortress seems almost delicate. Windows glow in scattered rows, roofs sink under fresh white layers, thin plumes of smoke rise, bend, and dissolve from above. Crowded districts might appear calm and orderly, their hardships concealed by distance. Night has a talent for making every city look more peaceful than it truly is. A curious footnote concerns the animals once kept within the castle. Over different periods, military residents brought unusual creatures into fortified spaces, including regimental pets and mascots. Dogs were especially valued companions, and the castle would eventually become known for a small burial ground dedicated to soldiers' dogs. It is a strangely tender detail in a place designed around stone walls, weapons, and authority. You imagine one such dog following a guard across a courtyard, paws slipping slightly on packed snow. The animal pauses to investigate an invisible scent, possibly of great strategic importance. The guard calls softly, and the pair disappear through an archway. Even fortresses need moments of ordinary affection. The lamps near the castle entrance glow against the falling snow. Their light reveals only fragments. A wall appears, then fades. An iron fitting catches the flame. A doorway becomes visible for a breath, then returns to shadow. Your eyes adjust slowly, and the darkness begins to show its layers. You hear a distant challenge called by a guard. The words are carried away by the wind before they reach you clearly. Another voice replies from somewhere beyond the gate. The exchange is brief, formal, and practiced. It reminds you that entry into such a place depends upon permission, rank, duty, or invitation. A wandering listener seeking a quiet view would probably receive less enthusiasm. The castle also holds symbols of national memory. Within its buildings rest objects associated with Scottish monarchy and government. Ceremonial spaces survive beside barracks, storerooms, and defensive works. The fortress is therefore more than a military position. It is a place where power has been displayed, protected, challenged, and carefully remembered. Yet historians continue to argue over how ordinary people in the 19th century understood the castle. Some believe many residents regarded it mainly as a military landmark, familiar but distant from daily concerns. Others suggest it remained a powerful symbol of Scottish identity and historical pride. No complete agreement has been reached, because private feelings rarely leave tidy records. You consider what the castle means to you in this moment. Perhaps it feels protective, a great stone guardian watching the sleeping city. Perhaps it feels severe, a reminder that authority often prefers high ground and locked gates. Perhaps it is simply beautiful beneath the snow, and beauty is allowed to exist without presenting a formal argument. The wind drops for a moment. In the sudden calm, you hear sounds from far below. A horse snorts, a door closes, someone laughs briefly in a nearby street. The noises rise toward the rock and become thin, almost weightless. Above them, the fortress remains unchanged. The oldest sections carry the memory of royal residence. Other buildings reflect later military needs. Stone has been repaired, rebuilt, reinforced, and adapted many times. What appears ancient and permanent is, in truth, the result of constant human effort. Walls survive because people continue to mend them. Snow settles on every surface without concern for age or importance. It covers battlements and gutters alike. It gathers upon steps once crossed by rulers, officers, servants, prisoners, messengers, cooks, and children. For one winter night, all their vanished footsteps seem to rest beneath the same white covering. Your gaze follows the outline of the walls. The highest points disappear into low cloud. Light from the city touches the underside of the snow, giving the sky a faint amber tint. The castle appears suspended between earth and darkness, neither fully near nor entirely distant. You remain there a little longer. Cold stone presses through the soles of your boots. Your fingers begin to stiffen inside your gloves. Still, the view holds you. There is comfort in watching something that has endured so much weather and so many human ambitions. The fortress does not speak. It simply stands above Edinburgh, patient under the snow, while lamps tremble along its gates and the winter night deepens around its walls. You descend into a street where the buildings lean close enough to make the sky feel narrow. Snow continues to fall, yet here it mingles with soot before reaching the ground. The white flakes darken upon window ledges, gutters, and doorsteps, becoming part of the city almost as soon as they touch it. The stone beneath your boots is uneven. Some slabs are polished by generations of feet, others tilt slightly, holding shallow pools of icy water. Your steps become careful and deliberate. A careless pace would send you sliding into a wall, and the wall would remain entirely unsympathetic. The air carries a stronger smell now. Coal smoke drifts from chimneys and settles between the tall buildings. It tastes faintly bitter at the back of your throat. Wood smoke, kitchen steam, wet leather, horse sweat, and the sharp scent of cold iron mix together in the enclosed street. Edinburgh in winter does not offer one clean fragrance, it offers a full committee. Windows rise above you in crowded rows. Behind some panes, curtains glow with lamplight. Behind others, darkness suggests empty rooms, sleeping households, or people saving fuel. A face appears briefly at an upper window, looking down into the street. The figure remains still for a moment, then draws the curtain closed. You continue beneath the projecting signs and narrow balconies. Water drips from roof edges, freezing along pipes and stonework. Wooden shutters creak. A shop door opens, releasing warm air scented with wool and candle wax. A clerk steps outside carrying a bucket of dirty water, notices you passing and waits until you are safely beyond range. Courtesy survives even in unpleasant duties. Records confirm that coal has become essential to urban life by the middle of the 19th century. It heats homes, powers industry, cooks meals, and feeds the growing demands of a modern city. Its smoke also stains walls, clouds the air, and settles on clothing. Progress arrives with a warm hearth in one hand and a blackened handkerchief in the other. You pass a cart loaded with sacks. The driver walks beside the horse, guiding it carefully down the frozen slope. The animal lowers its head and tests each step. Leather harness straps tighten with every movement, and small metal fittings give a faint clink. The cart wheels grind over the stone. You hear the sound travel ahead of you through the lane. Magnified by the tall walls, it becomes part of a larger winter rhythm. Hooves, wheels, Footsteps, distant voices, and chimney wind blend into a steady murmur. A doorway opens near your shoulder. An elderly woman steps out with a broom made from stiff twigs. She sweeps snow from the threshold in short, determined strokes. The task appears hopeless, since more snow falls while she works, but she continues. Human dignity often begins with refusing to surrender one small patch of ground. She nods to you without speaking. Her hands are red from the cold. A shawl covers her hair, and her breath rises in small clouds. When the doorway closes again, you hear a bolt slide into place. Farther along, the street widens near a row of workshops. Light spills through fogged windows. Inside one room, a man bends over a bench, using a small tool beneath a bright lamp. In another, two women fold cloth. Their movements are measured and repetitive. Work continues into the evening because daylight is scarce. Orders are waiting, and winter does not reduce the need for money. A peculiar little detail concerns the way soot settles indoors, even. Careful households may find black dust collecting on curtains, shelves, dishes, and bed linens. Some people cover furniture or clean surfaces repeatedly, only to discover that the city has quietly returned during the night. Soot is a guest who never knocks and never accepts a hint. You brush a dark speck from your sleeve. It leaves a faint mark. A narrow passage opens between two buildings. You turn into it and feel the temperature change at once. The wind is weaker, but the air is heavier. Smoke hangs in the passage, trapped by the walls. Your footsteps echo beneath overhanging rooms and enclosed stairways. A child carries a small bundle of kindling toward a basement entrance. The bundle is almost as wide as his shoulders. He walks with serious concentration, carefully protecting the dry sticks from snow. He disappears below street level, where a dim orange light flickers against the stone steps. The scene reminds you how much labor hides behind a single warm room. Fuel must be purchased, carried, stored, broken, and tended. Fires need attention. Ash must be removed. Chimneys must be cleaned. A household fire is not merely comfort. It is a daily agreement between money, muscle, patience, and smoke. Scholars disagree about whether the smoke of industrial cities was accepted mainly as a sign of prosperity or resented as a threat to health and cleanliness. Some surviving accounts describe smoke as evidence of trade and activity. Others complain about damaged buildings, foul air, coughing, and constant dirt. Both attitudes may live within the same person, especially when the same coal that irritates the lungs also prevents the room from freezing. You reach a corner where a lamplighter is at work. He raises a long pole toward a street lamp. The flame brightens behind the glass, casting a soft yellow circle over the snow. His coat is dusted white, and his movements are efficient. He has performed this task many times in rain, wind, and darkness. The lamp changes the street. Faces become visible. Doorways gain shape. The ice shines. Shadows retreat only a few feet, but the difference feels generous. You step beneath the light and notice the texture of the nearest wall. The stone is rough, pitted, and stained by years of weather and smoke. Melted snow runs through the shallow grooves, tracing paths made long before your arrival. A pair of workers passes carrying a long wooden beam. You press close to the wall to let them through. They apologize, although the beam nearly removes your hat. One of them laughs quietly. The other tells him to watch the corner. Their boots strike the ground in uneven rhythm as they vanish into the darker street. The city continues to work around you. Bread is carried, fires are fed, tools are cleaned, animals are sheltered, and shutters are secured. Every doorway contains a different struggle against the cold. Every chimney announces that someone has managed, for one more evening to create warmth. You move on through the smoky lane. Snow gathers at the edges of the street where wheels have not disturbed it. The lamps glow through the haze like small moons. Above them, chimneys stand in rows, releasing dark breath into the winter sky. Your pace grows slower. The cold stone, the bitter air, and the distant sounds begin to form a steady pattern. Edinburgh does not become quiet, but its noise softens into something almost soothing, a low urban lullaby, carried through smoke, snow, and narrow streets. A narrow doorway appears beneath a weathered stone arch, marked by a small brass number and a lantern protected by clouded glass. You lift the iron latch and step inside, grateful to leave the open street behind. The entrance passage is dim and cool. Your boots leave wet marks across the floorboards. Melted snow gathers along the edges of the mat, where countless visitors have stamped their feet and shaken water from their coats. The air smells of damp wool, beeswax, boiled vegetables, and old wood warmed by years of household fires. A staircase rises directly ahead. Its steps are narrow in the centre, worn down by generations of shoes. You place one hand on the wooden rail and begin to climb. The polished surface feels cold and smooth beneath your glove. Each step answers with a different creak, as though the building has developed a private language of groans, sighs, and mild objections. A woman waits on the landing above. She holds a candle in one hand and a ring of keys in the other. Her dark dress is plain but carefully kept, and a knitted shawl rests across her shoulders. She welcomes you with a restrained smile, the kind offered by someone who is friendly but has also spent the entire day solving other people's problems. You give your name. She checks a small ledger balanced on a table near the wall. The pages are covered with neat lines of handwriting. Beside each guest are notes about payment, meals, luggage, and expected length of stay. Records confirm that lodging houses are common features of 19th century cities. They serve travellers, clerks, tradespeople, students, widows, and workers who cannot afford or do not require a private household. Some are comfortable and respectable. Others are crowded, poorly maintained, or rather imaginative about the meaning of cleanliness. This house appears modest but orderly. The woman leads you along a corridor lit by two wall lamps. Framed prints hang at careful intervals, showing landscapes, churches, and a heroic-looking stone standing on a mountain. The stag seems better housed than many citizens, although he does appear exposed to the weather. Your room waits near the end of the passage. The key turns with a firm metallic scrape. The door opens inward, revealing a chamber that is small without feeling cramped. A narrow bed stands against one wall. A washstand occupies the corner. There is a chair, a chest of drawers, a small table, and a fireplace where a low flame has already been prepared. Warmth touches your face. You step inside and hear the door close behind you. The sudden quiet feels almost physical. Street sounds remain present, but they are softened by walls, curtains, and distance. Your coat is heavy with melting snow. You remove it slowly and hang it from a wooden peg. Droplets darken the floor beneath the hem. Your gloves follow, then your hat. Cold fingers flex in the firelight, stiff and pale after the walk. The room reveals its details gradually. The bed is covered by a thick wool blanket, slightly rough to the touch. A white linen sheet has been folded neatly beneath it. The pillow is firm and narrow. A ceramic warming pan rests beside the hearth, ready to carry hot coals beneath the blankets before sleep. Oddly enough, warming a bed can be a small domestic hazard. If the pan is left too long in one place, the sheets may scorch. If hot coals escape, the result becomes considerably more exciting than any tired traveller would prefer. Comfort, like many Victorian inventions, comes with instructions. You place your hands near the fire. The flames move around blackened pieces of coal, sending tiny sparks upward. Heat slowly returns to your fingertips. Your skin tingles as the cold releases its grip. On the washstand, a ceramic basin waits beside a matching jug. The water inside is cool. Truly warm washing water must be requested and carried up from the kitchen. You touch the surface with one finger, reconsider your ambitions, and decide that cleanliness can proceed in stages. A folded towel hangs from the side of the stand. Beside it sits a small bar of soap with a sharp and clean scent. There is also a hairbrush, a candle snuffer, and a chipped drinking cup. Nothing is luxurious, yet everything has been placed with care. You cross to the window. Heavy curtains frame a view across the old town roofs. Snow gathers on ledges, chimneys, and steeply sloping tiles. The glass is uneven, causing distant lights to bend and shimmer. A draught presses through the frame despite a strip of cloth tucked along the sill. You test the latch. It holds, although the window continues to whistle faintly whenever the wind rises. Victorian architecture possesses great dignity, but dignity does not always prevent cold air from entering around the edges. Below, a courtyard lies between several buildings. A servant carries a covered bucket toward a rear door. Someone draws water from a pump. A stable boy leads a horse beneath shelter, brushing snow from the animal's back with quick strokes. The work of the house continues while you stand in comfort. Rooms must be cleaned, fires benders and meals prepared, linens washed, water carried, and guests answered. The ease of one person often depends upon the unseen labour of another. Historians remain divided over how much independence lodging houses offered women who managed them. Some emphasize the financial opportunity available to widows and unmarried women who took in paying guests. Others point to unstable income, long hours, limited legal power, and the constant risk of debt. The truth depends greatly upon wealth, location, reputation, and luck. A knock sounds at your door. The landlady enters carrying a small tray. Upon it rests a candle, a box of matches, and a stoneware bottle filled with hot water. She places the bottle beneath the bed cover, explaining that it will warm the sheets. You thank her. She reminds you that breakfast is served at 8 in the morning and asks whether you require anything else. Her tone suggests that reasonable requests are welcome, while unreasonable ones may be discussed with the weather. You ask only for more coal. She nods approvingly. When she leaves, you slide the bolt across the door. The small click brings a feeling of privacy. You're enclosed now within 4 walls, with a fire, a bed, and a window overlooking the snow. You open the top drawer of the chest. Inside lies a folded sheet of paper, an extra candle, and a small sewing kit. The paper is blank. Perhaps this is meant for letters, accounts, or private thoughts that become very important late at night and far less impressive in the morning. You sit on the edge of the bed. The mattress gives slightly beneath your weight. It is filled with wool or horsehair, firm enough to support you and uneven enough to remind you that perfect comfort has not yet been invented. The room settles around you. Pipes tick within the walls. The fire gives a quiet crackle. A floorboard shifts in the corridor. From another chamber comes the muffled sound of a guest setting down a wash basin. You remove your boots and place them near the hearth. Steam begins to rise faintly from the damp leather. Your feet, freed from their cold prison, rest on a small woven rug. The fibres feel coarse but warm. Outside, snow continues to cover the roofs. Inside, the modest room gathers its own stillness. The candle flame holds steady, the blankets wait. The stoneware bottle spreads heat beneath the sheets, and the little fire creates a circle of amber light in which the long winter night suddenly feels manageable. The room grows warmer as the fire strengthens. and you draw the chair closer to the hearth. Coal settles inward with a soft collapse, sending a brief red glow through the grate. The light reaches the lower walls first, then climbs across the faded paper, the edge of the washstand, and the folds of the heavy curtains. You place one hand near the flames. Heat gathers slowly in your palm. The sensation is gentle at first, then sharp enough to remind you that cold fingers do not forgive sudden enthusiasm. You pull back slightly and let the warmth return at its own pace. The curtains command nearly half the room. They are made from thick fabric in a dark green shade, chosen less for beauty than for duty. Their purpose is to block drafts, preserve heat, and make the chamber feel separate from the winter outside. You reach for one edge and draw it more firmly across the window. The cloth is rough beneath your fingertips. Dust and the faint scent of old smoke cling to it. When the two panels meet, the last pale strip of snowy night disappears. At once, the room feels smaller, softer, and more private. Victorian households understand curtains as practical defences. Records confirm that heavy window coverings, bed hangings, rugs, and upholstered furniture are used to reduce the discomfort of poorly sealed rooms. Glass may be thin, frames may shift, and wind may discover every gap with irritating intelligence. Fabric becomes a second wall, although one that requires regular beating, brushing, and cleaning. You sit again and listen. The wind presses against the window in long breaths. The curtains move almost imperceptibly, rising and falling where cold air slips behind them. Every so often, the latch gives a small metallic tremor. The fire answers with its own language. There is the dry tick of heating iron, the faint hiss of moisture trapped inside coal, and the sudden pop that sends a spark against the guard. The sounds are modest, yet they fill the room because nothing else demands attention. You notice a brass screen standing beside the grate. Its mesh is darkened by use, and one corner is slightly bent. You position it more carefully in front of the coals. A spark in a room filled with curtains, blankets, wooden furniture, and drying clothes would be an unwelcome guest with excellent access to everything. One curious household habit involves the use of fire screens to protect the face from direct heat. Some people fear that sitting too close may damage the skin or produce an uneven complexion. A decorative screen may therefore be placed between a person and the flames. Even while the rest of the body remains cold, vanity and survival share the same chair with surprising ease. You glance at the mirror above the washstand. The firelight gives your reflection a softer expression. Shadows gather beneath your eyes, and the uneven glass gently alters the shape of your face. You look like a distant relative who has inherited your coat but not entirely your features. The thought brings a quiet smile. I bend to examine the fireplace tools. A poker, shovel, brush, and pair of tongs rest on a stand. Their handles are smooth from repeated use. You take the poker and nudge one piece of coal toward the center. A deeper orange glow opens beneath the black surface. Warmth spreads across your knees. You can feel it through the fabric of your clothes, steady and almost luxurious. Yet the far corners of the chamber remain cool. Heat in such a room does not travel evenly. It forms a small kingdom around the fire and leaves the rest of the territory to winter. This uneven warmth shapes how people arrange themselves indoors. Chairs gather close to the grate. Work is brought nearer to the light. Conversation takes place within the warmest circle. Those seated farther away may receive less heat, which can reflect rank, age, habit, or simple bad luck. The household fire is therefore both practical and social. It cooks, warms, illuminates, dries, and gathers people together. It may also produce smoke, soot burns, and quarrels over who is blocking the heat. Few objects are asked to perform so many duties while being struck regularly with an iron poker. You stretch one foot toward the fender. The leather of your boot, resting nearby, has begun to dry. It gives off the strong smell of damp hide and polish. You turn it slightly so the sole faces the warmth, careful not to place it too close. Across the room, the curtains stir again. You rest and inspect the window more closely. Cold air slips beneath the sill despite the folded strip of cloth. You take a spare towel from the washstand and press it into the narrow gap. The whistling stops. The silence that follows feels like a small victory. Scholars continue to debate how comfortable middle-level urban homes truly were during winters of this period. Inventories list carpets, curtains, fireplaces, and upholstered furniture, suggesting a degree of domestic comfort. Personal accounts, however, often mention cold bedrooms, smoky chimneys, damp walls, and fuel costs. Comfort exists, but it is fragile, expensive, and highly dependent upon labour. You understand that fragility as the flames begin to lower. A fire consumes attention as steadily as it consumes coal. Leave it untended, and the room cools. Feed it carelessly, and smoke may spill outward. Use too much fuel, and tomorrow's supply becomes a concern. You lift another piece of coal with the tongs. It lands in the grate with a dull weight. For several moments, nothing changes. Then a narrow line of red appears along its edge. The glow widens, joining the older coals beneath. The room brightens again. You lean back and let your shoulders relax. The chair is not especially soft, but its wooden arms support you well. A small cushion rests behind your back, filled with wool that has settled unevenly into the corners. The fabric smells faintly of lavender. Perhaps dried flowers were once stored nearby, or perhaps someone placed a sachet inside the cover. The scent is delicate beneath the stronger smells of coal and candle wax. You close your eyes for a moment. Without sight, the room becomes a collection of sounds and temperatures. Warmth touches your face. Cooler air rests against the back of your neck. The fire murmurs. The curtain fabric gives a soft rustle. Somewhere in the building, a clock strikes a single note, then falls silent. You open your eyes again. The candle has burned lower, forming a pool of wax around the wick. Its flame leans whenever a hidden draught crosses the room, then straightens with patient dignity. The firelight now reaches the ceiling. Shadows from the grate move across the plaster in slow patterns. They stretch, shrink, and gather again, giving the chamber the illusion of breathing. You remain within the warm circle. Outside, winter presses against stone and glass. Inside, cloth, coal, iron, and careful hands hold it back. Nothing about the room is grand, yet every object contributes to your comfort. The curtain seals the darkness away. The coals settle deeper, and the quiet heat continues to gather around you, steady enough to make the cold beyond the window feel very far away. A soft knock reaches the door, followed by the careful turn of the handle. A servant enters carrying a wooden tray balanced against one hip. Steam rises from a covered bowl, and the room fills at once with the scent of broth, onions, pepper, and freshly cut bread. You move the small table nearer the lamp. The servant places each item with quiet precision. There is a bowl of mutton broth, a thick slice of bread, a little dish of butter, boiled potatoes, and a wedge of hard cheese. A cup and saucer sit beside a brown teapot wrapped in a knitted cover to preserve the heat. Nothing on the tray is extravagant, yet on a snowy night, simple food acquires a dignity that richer meals sometimes lack. The broth gleams beneath a thin layer of fat. The potatoes release white clouds when split. Butter begins to soften as soon as it touches the warm bread. You thank the servant, and she gives a brief nod. Her hands are roughened from work, and one sleeve is dusted with flour. She explains that the broth has been kept near the kitchen range since late afternoon. Growing stronger as bones, barley, vegetables, and herbs slowly surrendered their flavour. Then she leaves, carrying the empty tray cloth beneath one arm. The door closes, and the meal waits beneath the yellow lamp. You lift the spoon. The first mouthful is hot enough to slow you. Salt, meat, barley, and pepper settle warmly across your tongue. The broth has the deep, patient taste of food prepared without hurry, though the people who made it almost certainly had no leisure at all. Records confirm that the daily diet of many people in mid-19th century Edinburgh depends heavily upon bread, porridge, potatoes, broth, and inexpensive cuts of meat. Wealth determines variety. A prosperous household may serve fish, poultry, puddings, preserved fruits, and imported goods, while poorer families rely upon whatever is filling, affordable, and available. You tear the bread with both hands. Its crust is firm, and the inside remains slightly warm. The butter carries a faint salty sweetness. Crumbs gather on the plate and cling to your fingertips. Outside the room, dishes move along the corridor. You hear ceramic touch wood, a spoon fall, and someone whisper a complaint about a missing napkin. The house is feeding several people at once, each in a separate chamber, each probably believing that his or her own supper has arrived unusually late. The lamp burns steadily above the table. Its light turns the broth golden and casts the handle of the spoon into a long shadow. The flame smells faintly of oil and heated metal. Every time you lean closer to the bowl, your own shadow crosses the wall. You split one potato. The flesh breaks apart easily beneath the knife. A pinch of salt, a little butter, and the plain vegetable becomes deeply satisfying. Hunger is an honest seasoning. A curious footnote concerns the rules surrounding table manners. Manuals of polite conduct advise diners on matters ranging from the proper use of knives to the correct way to unfold a napkin. Some warn against blowing upon hot food, even when the soup seems determined to remove the roof of your mouth. Refinement, apparently, requires a brave tongue. You wait for the broth to cool. The pause allows you to notice the sounds from below. A kitchen door swings open. Someone calls for more coal. Metal lids strike the top of the range. Water is poured into a large pot. The kitchen is the hidden engine of the house. Its heat is intense, its hours long, and its order maintained through repetition. Vegetables are peeled, bones cracked, bread sliced, tea measured, plates warmed, and leftovers carefully saved. A meal that appears quietly at your door is the final result of many hands and many small decisions. The teapot gives a tiny creak as it cools. You remove the knitted cover and pour dark tea streams into the cup, carrying a sharp, comforting fragrance. A small jug contains milk. There is no sugar bowl, perhaps because sugar is costly, perhaps because the house expects guests to provide their own preferences, or perhaps because someone in another room has quietly adopted it. You add a little milk. The colour softens. Tea has become central to domestic life across Britain by this period. It marks hospitality, rest, respectability, and routine. It may be served in grand drawing rooms or cramped kitchens. The vessel changes, but the pause around the cup remains important. You lift it carefully. Heat passes through the china into your fingers. The first sip is slightly bitter, then smooth. It clears the taste of the broth and leaves warmth in your throat. Historians differ over how far tea drinking encouraged social connection across class boundaries. Some argue that shared habits created a common domestic culture, even when the quality of tea and tableware differed greatly. Others note that access, cost of service, and ceremony remained strongly divided by wealth. No final agreement exists, because the same cup can express comfort, status, discipline, or simple thirst. You take another bite of cheese. It is firm, sharp, and dry enough to demand more tea. The combination works well. Cheese preserves milk through the cold months, bread provides weight, and hot drink completes the meal without unnecessary drama. A carriage passes outside. The sound arrives faintly through the walls, then fades. Within the room, the lamp and the supper create a world no larger than the table. You'll begin to eat more slowly. The sharpest hunger has passed. Each mouthful becomes less urgent. You notice the grains of barley at the bottom of the bowl, the browned edge of the bread, the tiny crack in the glaze of the plate. Nothing is wasted. You use the final piece of bread to sambeil the last of the broth. Such behaviour may not delight a severe etiquette manual, but the bowl offers no criticism. The servant returns with a small pudding covered in pale sauce. It is made from suet, flour, dried fruit, and spice, dense, sweet, and warm. It arrives with the confidence of something designed to defeat winter through weight alone. One spoonful is enough to understand its purpose. The pudding settles comfortably after the broth, filling whatever space remains. A few raisins appear within it like dark jewels, modest but welcome. You finish the tea. The room now smells of bread crust, spice, and cooling china. The lamp flame shortens as the oil lowers. On the table, the empty dishes record the quiet progress of the meal. You sit back. Warmth spreads through your chest and limbs. Hunger no longer sharpens the night. The silence feels fuller now, softened by food, light, and the gentle clink of the spoon as you place it beside the bowl. The supper has required no ceremony. It has simply done what a good winter meal should do. It has returned heat to the body, steadied the mind, and made the snowy city beyond the walls feel less severe. A murmur travels through the wall beside your chair. At first it is too faint to understand. You hear only the rise and fall of a voice, then the softer answer of another person. The plaster seems to carry certain tones while swallowing the words themselves, so the conversation becomes less like speech and more like weather moving through another room. You remain still and listen. A chair leg scrapes across floorboards. A drawer opens. Someone coughs twice, pauses, and clears the throat with determined ceremony. The sounds are ordinary, yet they remind you that the house contains many separate lives, each enclosed by a door that is thinner than anyone would prefer. The building creaks around them all. Timber contracts in the cold. Pipes tap inside the walls. Somewhere above, a footstep crosses the ceiling from one side to the other. The boards complain at every pace, revealing the traveller's position with more honesty than a witness in court. A woman's voice becomes briefly clear. She asks whether the water has been brought up. A man replies that it has not. She says something sharper, and his answer becomes too quiet to catch. Then a bell rings from one of the rooms farther along the corridor. The sound is small but commanding. A system of bell pulls connects guest rooms to the service areas below. When a cord is tugged, a wire carries the movement through walls and passages until a numbered indicator or labelled bell announces who requires attention. It is an efficient arrangement for the guest and a constant interruption for everyone else. Records confirm that domestic service provides employment for large numbers of women and girls in 19th century Britain, in lodging houses, hotels, and private homes. Servants clean rooms, carry water, tend fires, prepare food, answer bells, wash linens, and perform errands. Their labour keeps respectable households moving, though their names often disappear from written accounts. You hear quick steps approaching. A young servant passes your door, shoes striking the boards in a hurried rhythm. She stops at the room where the bell sounded. There is a knock, a muffled exchange. Then the footsteps retreat towards the staircase. The guest has requested another candle. The matter sounds simple, yet the candle must be found, recorded, carried upstairs, placed safely and perhaps added to the bill. Comfort is assembled from dozens of tiny tasks that are almost invisible to the person receiving them. You turn your head toward the opposite wall. From that direction comes a low, steady voice reading aloud. The speaker has a patient rhythm, perhaps reciting a newspaper report or a passage from a book. Another listener occasionally makes a sound of agreement. Reading aloud is a common evening practice. Books and newspapers may be shared among several people, especially where light is limited or copies are expensive. One reader gives voice to the page while others sew, mend clothing, polish shoes, or simply rest. The words remain unclear, but the cadence is soothing. A sentence rises, pauses, and settles. Another begins. You imagine a middle-aged clerk reading to his wife, or a visiting aunt entertaining a child, or two strangers sharing the news because neither wishes to sit alone. Then laughter breaks through. It arrives suddenly from a room near the stairwell, bright and uncontrolled. A man attempts to quiet himself, fails, and laughs again. A second voice joins him. For several seconds, the whole corridor seems lighter. One curious custom in shared lodgings concerns the use of coded knocks. Residents may agree upon particular patterns to identify friends, servants, or regular callers. Two quick taps might mean one person, while a slow knock followed by a pause might mean another. Oddly enough, this modest system can produce great confusion when an impatient visitor forgets the pattern and attacks the door like a drummer. A knock sounds somewhere below. It comes in 3 uneven blows followed by silence. A bolt slides. The front door opens, allowing a gust of cold air to sweep into the entrance hall. Male voices exchange greetings. Boots are stamped on the mat. A coat is shaken free of snow. The newcomer climbs the stairs. You hear the weight of each step before the figure appears beneath the corridor lamp. He is a broad man carrying a leather case, his cheeks red from the cold. The landlady follows him with a candle and explains the house rules in a voice that suggests those rules have been tested by experts. No loud singing, no visitors at unreasonable hours, no boots left where someone may fall over them. The man agrees to everything with great seriousness, which may indicate good character or advanced experience in appearing innocent. A door opens across the hall. An elderly guest peers out, studies at the newcomer, and closes the door without comment. The inspection lasts only a moment, but it feels thorough enough to include ancestry, finances, and moral discipline. Shared buildings create their own quiet communities. Residents notice one another's habits. They know who wakes early, who returns late, who receives letters, who burns too much coal, and who sings while dressing. Privacy exists, but it is surrounded by observation. Scholars continue to dispute whether urban lodging houses weaken traditional community ties or created new forms of social connection. Some argue that frequent movement produced loneliness and instability. Others find evidence of friendship, mutual aid, shared meals, and informal protection among residents. The answer may depend upon the house, the neighborhood, and the temperament of the people behind the doors. A child begins to cry on the floor above. The sound is tired rather than frightened. A parent whispers, floorboards shift. The crying lowers, rises once more, and gradually becomes a soft whimper. Someone sings a slow tune. The melody passes through the ceiling without words. It is only a few notes, repeated patiently. The child quiets. The singer continues for another minute, perhaps to be certain, perhaps because the tune comforts the adult as well. You breathe more slowly. The house is filled with private rituals. A traveller unpacks a case. A servant counts clean towels. A widow folds a letter and places it beneath her pillow. A clerk removes stiff boots and rubs his aching feet. Somewhere, a kettle is shared between 2 rooms. A door farther down opens. You hear a polite good night, followed by the careful lowering of a latch. Another guest crosses the corridor carrying a candlestick. The flame passes beneath your door as a thin line of gold, then disappears. The voices diminish one by one. The reader reaches the end of a page. The laughing men lower their tones. The newcomer sets down his case. The child above is silent now. Only the building continues speaking. Wood sighs. A distant bell trembles once. Water moves through a pipe with a hollow rush. Wind touches the outer walls while human warmth gathers inside them. You sit among these softened sounds, neither entirely alone nor required to join anyone. Beyond the plaster, strangers settle into their separate rooms, each carrying a history you will never know. For this quiet hour, their footsteps, whispers, and small domestic noises surround you like a gentle human tide, rising through the house and slowly falling towards sleep. A measured knock sounds from the street below, followed by the low call of a watchman announcing the hour. The voice travels through the narrow lane with surprising strength. It rises between stone walls, touches the window panes, and fades beneath the roofs. For a moment, the entire street seems to listen. You move closer to the window and draw the curtain aside. Cold glass meets your fingertips. Outside, the snow has thinned to a fine drifting powder. A man walks beneath a lantern, his dark coat buttoned high and his hat pulled low against the wind. In one hand he carries a staff. In the other, he holds the lantern slightly forward so that its light reaches the uneven stones. He pauses near a doorway. The lantern reveals a pale circle of pavement, the edge of a drain, and a row of footprints partly filled by new snow. He studies the entrance, tests the latch, then continues. The city at night depends upon such careful movement. Records confirm that watchmen and police patrols are important parts of urban order by the middle of the 19th century. Edinburgh has already developed a more organised system of policing than the informal watches of earlier generations. Patrolmen guard streets, report fires, challenge suspicious activity, assist lost travellers, and help maintain public peace. Their duties sound noble when listed neatly. In practice, much of the work involves cold feet, dark alleys, drunken arguments, loose animals, faulty locks, and citizens who believe rules apply mainly to other people. The watchman reaches the corner and speaks briefly with another officer. Their voices remain low. One points towards the upper street. The other lifts his lantern and looks in that direction. Snow glitters in the light, then vanishes into darkness. You open the window a fraction. Cold air enters at once, sharp and clean compared with the warmth of the room. It carries the scent of wet stone, horse manure, distant smoke, and something faintly metallic from the frozen railings. Below, the patrol resumes. The watchman's boots strike the street in an even rhythm. His staff taps the ground every few steps. The sound announces his presence without alarm, reassuring some residents and perhaps warning others to become suddenly respectable. A movement appears beneath an archway. A man steps into the lantern light carrying a parcel under his coat. He freezes when the watchman calls to him. The two exchange words. The man opens the parcel and reveals several loaves of bread wrapped in cloth. The watchman examines them with solemn attention. Perhaps he suspects theft. Perhaps he is simply hungry. After a moment, he waves the man onward. The bread carrier hurries away, clutching the parcel as if it contains crown jewels rather than tomorrow's breakfast. Oddly enough, night patrols may also be expected to call out the weather. A watchman might announce rain, frost, wind, or snow along with the hour, giving people indoors a spoken report from the street. This is useful to anyone preparing for travel, though less useful to anyone already hearing ice rattle against the window. You close the gap in the frame but continue watching. A covered cart enters the lane at a slow pace. The driver leans forward, peering through the darkness. The horse's breath rises in thick white clouds. Its shoes scrape against the frozen ground. The watchman raises one hand. The cart stops. A wheel has caught near a ridge of hard snow. The driver climbs down, and together the two men push at the side. The horse strains forward. Leather creaks. The wheel jerks free with a wet crack, sending slush across the watchman's boots. Hein looks down at the damage. The driver apologizes. The watchman says something that makes them both laugh. Order survives, though dignity has suffered. The cart rolls away. Night of Policing is not only about arrest and authority. It includes practical aid, warnings, directions, and constant attention to fire. In a city filled with candles, hearths, timber floors, crowded rooms, and stored fuel, a small flame can become a great danger. The watchman pauses beneath one chimney and looks upward, watching sparks rise through the snow. They appear briefly above the roofline, bright orange against the black sky. He waits until the sparks diminish, then walks on. You notice how alert he remains. Every sound receives a glance. Every open gate requires inspection. Every unusual light becomes a possible concern. Even somnolence can seem suspicious when it gathers too deeply around a doorway. A bell rings somewhere farther away. It is not a church bell marking the hour. This one is faster, sharper, and repeated. The watchman turns at once. Another patrolman appears at the end of the lane. They call to each other. The first man begins to walk quickly, then breaks into a run. His lantern swings from side to side, throwing wild shadows across the walls. You lean closer to the glass. The bell stops. For several minutes, nothing follows. No flames rise, no crowd gathers. The street remains quiet. Perhaps it was a mistaken alarm, a disturbance already settled, or a signal carried from another district. The watchman does not return immediately. Scholars bicker over how ordinary citizens viewed the expanding police systems of 19th century cities. Some evidence suggests that many welcomed greater protection from theft, violence, and this other accounts reveal suspicion, especially among poorer communities who experience patrols as intrusive or unfair. The uniform could represent safety to one household and unwanted scrutiny to the next. You consider the empty street below. Authority appears simple from a warm room. A lantern passes, a door is checked, and order seems to continue. At street level, the meaning may be more complicated. A woman emerges from a nearby building. She wraps a shawl tightly around herself and looks in both directions. A moment later, the watchman reappears beside her. He speaks gently and points toward the crossing. She seems confused. Perhaps she is seeking a doctor, a relative, or an address hidden among similar stone doorways. The watchman escorts her to the corner, where another officer waits. Together they guide her toward a broader road. Their lanterns move away like two small stars. The lane darkens when they leave. Yao become aware of the noises that their presence had covered. Water drips from a roof edge. A shutter gives a faint squeak. Somewhere, a rat rustles behind a stack of crates with the confidence of a creature that pays no rent. The hour grows later. One final patrolman enters the street, checks the same doors, studies the same windows, and leaves another chain of footprints across the snow. His routine seems repetitive, yet repetition is the point. Safety depends upon returning, looking again, and refusing to assume that quiet means nothing is wrong. You release the curtain, the fabric falls back into place, shutting out the lane and its moving lanterns. Still, the steady tread remains in your ears. Far below, the watchman calls the hour once more. His voice passes through the snowy darkness. calm and formal, telling the sleeping city that someone is awake, someone is walking, and someone is still keeping watch. The lane narrows until the walls seem almost close enough to touch with both hands. You step carefully into one of Edinburgh's old closes, where snow has settled in thin white ribbons along the edges of worn steps. The passage falls steeply between tall buildings, descending toward a darkness broken only by a single lamp fixed above a doorway. The air changes at once. Wind no longer sweeps freely through the street. Instead, it moves in restless currents, slipping around corners, under doors, and through cracks in ancient stone. The scent is close and layered. Damp masonry, ashes, cooking fat, leather, and stale water gather beneath the overhanging rooms. Your hand brushes the wall. The stone feels rough, cold, and slightly wet. Centuries of weather have softened some edges while sharpening others. Tiny patches of ice cling inside the cracks, catching the lamplight like fragments of glass. The close is not simply an alley. It is a vertical neighbourhood. Doors open at different heights. Steps rise toward upper chambers and descend towards cellars. Wooden galleries connect one part of a building to another. Windows look across such narrow spaces that neighbours can exchange words without raising their voices. A woman leans from an upper sill and lowers a basket on a rope. Below, a shopkeeper places a wrapped parcel inside. She pulls it upward, hand over hand, while the basket turns slowly in the cold air. Neither person appears impressed by the arrangement. It is merely one more method of avoiding several flights of stairs. A surviving city record shows that many closes serve as vital routes between the main street and densely occupied buildings behind it. These passages provide access to homes, workshops, storage rooms, wells, and small courts. They are private in feeling but deeply public in use, carrying an endless stream of residents, deliveries, waste, gossip, and daily labour. You descend another step. A thin stream of water runs along the centre channel. Dark beneath the snow, you keep close to the wall to avoid it. Drainage remains imperfect, and winter cold turns ordinary dampness into a polished hazard. A door opens near your knee. A man emerges from a basement room carrying a lantern and a bundle of tools. He straightens slowly beneath the low frame, looks up at the falling snow, and sighs as though the weather has broken a personal promise. Behind him, you glimpse a workshop. A bench stands beneath the wall. Leather scraps cover the floor. Several unfinished shoes rest beside wooden forms. The room is small, but its fire gives off a fierce orange glow. The shoemaker closes the door and climbs past you. His lantern briefly illuminates the stair ahead, then he turns a corner, leaving you with only the fixed lamp and the faint shine of snow. A curious footnote concerns the names of these passages. Some are called after trades, landowners, churches, taverns, or memorable events. Others acquire names from habits and local stories that are never formally recorded. A close may carry a grand title while smelling strongly of boiled cabbage, which is one of history's quieter jokes. You reach a small court enclosed by a building on every side. Snow falls almost vertically here. It passes through the open square of sky above and settles upon barrels, steps, and a stone water trough. The upper windows form a ring around you, some glowing, some dark. A young girl crosses the court with a covered jug. She walks quickly but not carelessly. Her shoes have been wrapped with strips of cloth for extra warmth. At the water point, she sets down the jug, works the handle, and waits. The pump gives a reluctant groan. Nothing happens. She tries again with both hands. A small rush of water finally appears, splashing against the metal rim. She fills the jug, covers it, and begins the climb toward an upper floor. Carrying water shapes the rhythm of life in crowded housing. Every cup used for drinking, washing, cooking and cleaning must come from somewhere. When a supply is shared, the journey is repeated many times each day. Winter makes the work heavier, colder and more dangerous. You watch the girl disappear through a doorway above you. A cloth line stretches between two windows. Several stiff garments hang from it, frozen into strange shapes. A shirt twists slowly in the air, its sleeves extended as though protesting its treatment. One scandalous aside tells of residents using windows for nearly every household purpose. Bedding is shaken, rugs beaten, baskets lowered, messages shouted, and unwanted water sometimes thrown into the passage below. A wise pedestrian therefore listens carefully before walking beneath an open sash. You glance upward. All windows remain closed. Still, you move a little faster. From another entrance comes the smell of onions frying in a pan. A man laughs inside, followed by the quick rhythm of a fiddle tune tapped on a table. The music is faint and uneven, yet it brings sudden warmth to the court. A baby cries nearby. A dog answers with one bark. Someone tells the dog to be quiet. The dog, having made its point, obeys. Life presses close in these buildings. Families, lodgers, apprentices, widows, children and labourers occupy rooms divided by thin walls and shared stairs. One household's argument becomes another household's entertainment. One cooking fire scents an entire landing. Researchers remain divided over whether the closes should be understood chiefly as places of hardship or as strong communities shaped by mutual dependence. Some descriptions stress crowding, poor sanitation and insecurity. Others reveal shared childcare, borrowed tools, neighbourhood credit, and support during illness. Both realities may occupy the same stairway. You enter a covered passage beneath a building. The ceiling is low enough that you instinctively lower your head. Your footsteps echo in the enclosed space. Moisture shines on the walls, and the darkness ahead seems thick enough to possess weight. Halfway through, you hear a scratching sound. A small shape moves beside a crate. You stop. A cat steps into the light, carrying itself with the solemn confidence of a landlord inspecting property. Its fur is grey, its tail held high. It studies you for a moment, decides you are harmless, and continues into the court. The passage opens on another steep stair. Here, the snow lies deeper. Few people have crossed recently, and your boots create fresh impressions. The white surface hides broken edges and shallow hollows, so every step demands attention. You hold the rail. The iron is painfully cold, even through your glove. It guides you upward past shuttered windows and narrow doors, each marked by scratches, repairs, and layers of old paint. At the top, you turn and look back. The close descends through alternating bands of light and darkness. Smoke rises from hidden chimneys. A figure crosses the lower court and vanishes. The frozen garments sway above the pump. Nothing in the passage is grand, yet the place feels full of accumulated life. Generations have climbed these steps carrying bread, coal, babies, tools, letters, rent, grief, and small hopes. The walls have heard lullabies, bargains, prayers, complaints, and laughter. Snow continues to settle over all of it. The rough edges soften. The dark channel grows pale. The old stone holds the cold without protest. You turn into the upper street, carrying with you the hush of the close, where the city seems not spread across the land, but stacked in layers, one human story resting quietly above another. The broader street opens before you in a row of shop fronts, each window glowing with the final activity of the evening. Snow gathers beneath the sills and along the carved letters above the doors. Merchants stand inside counting coins. folding cloth, covering food, and preparing their premises for the long, cold hours. The street still feels awake, but it is drawing inward, one shutter and one extinguished lamp at a time. You pass beside a baker's window. Several loaves remain upon wooden shelves, their crusts dark and shining in the warm light. A tray of small rolls sits near the counter. Flour dusts the baker's apron and gathers in pale streaks across the floor. He lifts the unsold bread and places it into baskets. Some may be kept for morning, some may be offered at a lower price, some may be sent to another household. Bread is too important to waste casually, especially in winter. A woman enters just before the door is locked. She requests a loaf and searches her purse with cold fingers. The baker waits while she counts several coins twice. He chooses a smaller loaf, wraps it in paper, and adds one roll without mentioning it. The woman notices, her expression softens, but she does not embarrass him with excessive thanks. She places the parcel beneath her shawl and steps back into the snow. A city directory from this period confirms that Edinburgh supports a dense variety of small traders, bakers, grocers, tailors, booksellers, watchmakers, ironmongers, tobacconists, stationers, and many other specialists serve neighbourhoods within walking distance. A household may depend upon several shops each week, each one supplying a narrow but essential part of daily life. The baker turns the sign in his window. The open side disappears. You move toward the neighbouring shop, where bolts of fabric stand upright behind the glass. Deep blue wool, brown linen, black silk, and checked cotton form orderly columns of colour beneath the lamps. Inside, a shop assistant rolls one length of cloth around a wooden core. He smooths it carefully with both hands, aligning every edge. A second worker records the day's sales in a ledger. The owner walks from shelf to shelf, checking that nothing valuable remains too close to the windows. Cloth is expensive, vulnerable to damp, and attractive to thieves. The outer shutters are thick wood reinforced with iron strips. Two men lift the first panel into place. It lands against the frame with a heavy thud, covering half the display. The remaining light becomes a narrow golden rectangle. A final customer leaves carrying a wrapped bundle beneath one arm. He steps into the snow and immediately checks the knot, apparently convinced that winter itself may attempt to steal the purchase. A curious custom appears in the careful arrangement of shop windows. Merchants understand that display can tempt the eye long before modern advertising fills the streets. Goods are stacked, draped, polished, and placed beneath bright lamps. A modest shopkeeper may spend considerable time making 6 hats look like a grand commercial empire. You pass a hatter's window. 3 tall hats stand upon wooden forms, each tilted at a slightly different angle. One appears dignified, one appears severe, the third appears surprised. The hatter removes them one by one. Their empty stands remain in the window for a moment before the shutter closes. A bell rings above the door of a grocer's bar. The smell of tea, coffee, dried fruit, soap, cheese, and spices reaches the pavement. Shelves rise from floor to ceiling, crowded with jars, boxes, tins, sacks, and wrapped parcels. A brass scale sits upon the counter beside a set of weights. The grocer measures sugar into blue paper. He folds the edges inward, twists the top, and ties it with string. Nothing is sold in a bright printed package. Goods are weighed by hand, wrapped by hand, and entered into an account by hand. A customer asks whether the roads will remain passable. The grocer looks through the window and offers the confident opinion of a man who has not yet tried to drive a cart across them. He says the snow will stop soon. At that exact moment, it begins to fall more heavily. You continue before his authority suffers further damage. A bookseller stands on a ladder inside the next shop. Replacing volumes on an upper shelf, the room is narrow and lined with books from floor to ceiling. Leather bindings catch the light in red, green, brown, and gold. A clerk gathers loose newspapers from a table. Another carries a box toward the back room. The owner lowers a glass cover over several valuable works and locks it with a tiny key. Printed material plays a central role in Edinburgh's identity. The city supports publishers, printers, booksellers, newspapers, and learned institutions. Ideas move through these shops in physical form, packed in crates, stacked on counters, and carried beneath coats to protect them from snow. You study the window before it is covered. There are sermons, novels, maps, medical works, school books, and collections of poetry. One slim volume lies open to an engraving of a distant landscape. For a few coins, a reader may travel much farther than any carriage could carry them during such weather. Scholars remain divided over how widely affordable reading material crosses social boundaries during the middle of the century. Some point to growing literacy, circulating libraries, inexpensive newspapers, and second-hand markets. Others emphasize the cost of books, limited leisure, and uneven access to education. The printed world expands, but not every door into it opens equally. The bookseller descends from his ladder. He notices you looking and gives a polite nod. Then he draws the curtain, and the distant landscape disappears. Across the street, an ironmonger's assistant stacks shovels inside the doorway. Chains hang from hooks, pots, hinges, nails, tools, and locks crowd the walls. Metal reflects the lamp in small cold flashes. The owner checks a row of keys, unlocks a cabinet, then another. At the front door, he tests the bolt twice. A man who sells locks has a professional reputation to defend. Farther along, a sweet shop remains open. Glass jars stand behind the counter, filled with hard candies in pale stripes and cloudy colours. A child presses both hands against the window while an older sister waits beside him. Her points to one jar. She shakes her head, and points to another. She shakes her head again, and then points to the entire shelf, presenting a solution of admirable simplicity. The shopkeeper comes to the door and gives him a single small sweet. The child accepts it with solemn gratitude, as though concluding a treaty. The sister leads him away, one by one. The lamps vanish behind shutters. The baker locks his door. The grocer carries in the last crate. The bookseller checks his latch. The ironmonger lowers a heavy bar across the entrance. The street changes with every closure. Warm squares of light become dark wooden panels. Voices fade. Footsteps grow more distinct against the snow. The commercial day contracts into silence. You hear coins being counted behind one wall, behind another. A broom moves across the floor. Somewhere, a merchant sighs over a disappointing toll. Elsewhere, another closes the ledger with satisfaction. Every shop contains a private reckoning. Rent must be paid, stock must be replaced, credit must be extended carefully. A week of bad weather can keep customers away. A single generous season can secure a household for months. The final merchant steps outside carrying a lantern and pulls the door shut, tests it, and turns the key. Snow settles on his shoulders while he studies the darkened frontage. For one quiet second, he seems reluctant to leave. Then he lifts his collar and walks toward home. You remain in the nearly empty street as the last shop lamp disappears. The windows become black mirrors. Shutters stand firm against wind and cold. Only the snow continues its patient trade, laying a white covering over threshold, signs, and silent counters, until the whole street seems closed beneath a single gentle cloth. A carriage turns into the street with the slow caution of a ship entering a narrow harbour. Its lamps glow through the snowfall, two small circles of amber trembling above the road. The horse lowers its head against the wind, iron shoes striking the frozen stones with the hard, uncertain rhythm. Each step sounds deliberate, each wheel complains. You stand beneath a doorway and watch it approach. The driver sits high above the road, wrapped in a thick coat with a scarf pulled across his mouth. Snow clings to his hat and gathers along his shoulders. He holds the reins firmly but not harshly, speaking to the horse in a calm voice whenever the animal hesitates. The road is more ice than stone now. Repeated traffic has pressed the snow into a smooth grey surface. Wheel tracks cut through it in uneven channels, then freeze into ridges. A carriage must follow these grooves or fight against them, and either choice can produce a sudden sideways slide. The near wheel strikes a ridge. The carriage tilts, recovers, and continues. Inside, a passenger catches the curtain and pulls it aside. You glimpse a pale face, startled but dignified, as though falling into the street would be acceptable only after proper notice. A mainstream record of city travel confirms that horse-drawn transport remains essential to Edinburgh in the middle of the 19th century. Carriages carry wealthy residents, hired passengers, doctors, officials, parcels, and visitors between districts. Carts move coal, food, buildings materials, and household goods. The city depends upon hooves and wheels from dawn until deep into the night. Winter complicates every journey. A steep street that is merely tiring in summer becomes dangerous beneath snow. Horses may slip, wheels may lock, axles may crack. Drivers must judge speed, weight, slope, and weather, while passengers sit inside and wonder why the journey is taking so long. The carriage reaches the corner. The driver pulls gently on the reins. The horse slows, but the rear wheels begin to slide. The vehicle drifts several inches toward the curb before stopping with a jolt. The passenger opens the door at once. A boot appears, then disappears again when the passenger notices the ice below. The driver climbs down and spreads a small quantity of grit beneath the step. The passenger tries once more. He emerges wearing a dark overcoat and carrying a cane. He lowers one foot carefully, tests the ground, and transfers his weight with great concentration. His expression suggests that the pavement has insulted his family. You turn away to hide a smile. Across the road, another vehicle approaches from the opposite direction. This one is a hired cab, smaller and lighter, with a single lamp near the driver. Its horse moves quickly, eager for shelter or perhaps simply tired of being outdoors. The two drivers call to one another. There is barely enough room to pass. One carriage moves close to the wall, the other enters the deeper snow near the gutter. Harness buckles clink, wheels scrape. For several tense seconds, wood, iron, horseflesh, and human confidence occupy the same narrow space. Then both vehicles pass safely. The drivers exchange a final remark that sounds polite only from a distance. A curious footnote concerns the materials sometimes spread on icy roads. Sand, ashes, gravel, and even refuse may be used to improve traction. Ash from household fires is especially useful because it is plentiful, rough, and already waiting in buckets. The solution is practical, though it gives the snow the appearance of badly seasoned porridge. A servant emerges from a basement entrance carrying such a bucket. He scatters ashes across the slope in broad movements. Dark specks spread over the white surface. The next horse places its feet more securely, and the driver lifts one hand in thanks. You continue along the edge of the road. A delivery cart stands beside a closed shop. Two men are unloading wooden crates while the horse waits beneath a coarse blanket. Steam rises from the animal's body. Its ears turn toward every sound. One crate slips. The men catch it between them, stagger backward, and set it down with great care. Whatever lies inside produces a delicate clatter. Glass, perhaps. The driver looks toward the crate with an expression of silent prayer. Movement through the city requires constant labour. Horses must be fed, watered, groomed, shod and rested. Harness must be cleaned and repaired. Wheels need grease, stables need bedding. Drivers spend long hours in rain, wind, heat and cold. The carriage may look elegant from inside. From the stable yard, elegance smells strongly of hay, leather, mud and hard work. Scholars divide sharply over whether expanding urban transport during this period made city life more connected or merely increased congestion and inequality. Some argue that hired vehicles and improved roads allowed greater movement between neighbourhoods. Others note that regular carriage travel remained too costly for many people. While the noise, waste and danger affected everyone, the same wheel that carries one person comfortably may force another against the wall. A coach enters the road at greater speed. It is larger than the earlier carriages. With luggage tied beneath a covering at the rear, several passengers sit inside, their faces appearing briefly behind misted windows. The driver guides a team of horses, each animal pulling in careful rhythm. A guard sits behind him with a horn resting near one knee. The coach slows before the steepest part of the street. One passenger climbs out to reduce the weight and immediately regrets the decision. His shoes slide apart. He grabs the side rail and remains there, suspended between dignity and disaster. A porter offers an arm. Together they move toward firmer ground. The horses begin the climb. Their shoulders strain beneath the harness. Hooves strike, slip and strike again. The driver leans forward, speaking steadily. The wheels turn slowly through the rutted snow. You hear the effort in every sound. Leather stretches, chains tighten, iron rims grind against stone. The animals breathe in deep bursts, clouds rising around their heads. At last, the coach reaches the top of the rise. The driver eases the reins, the team slows, one horse shakes its mane, sending snow into the air. The guard lifts the horn and sounds a brief note. The call travels between the buildings. Windows open above the road. A child looks down. A woman draws back a curtain. Someone waiting farther along steps into view. The coach continues. Its lamps become smaller, then dimmer, then vanish beyond the next turn. The road settles again into the quieter rhythm of single carts and distant hooves. You listen to the remaining traffic. A cab returns empty. A milk cart rattles across a crossing. A doctor passes in a light carriage, moving faster than caution recommends. Somewhere behind you, a horse snorts and stamps its feet. The city does not sleep all at once. People still need to arrive, depart, deliver, rescue, collect, and return home. The roads remain active long after shop doors close. Snow begins covering the newest tracks. Wheel marks soften, hoof prints fill. The grey road turns pale again, as though the night's journeys are being erased almost as soon as they occur. You remain beside the frozen street, listening to the fading clatter. In the distance, one final carriage crosses the stones with a low wooden rumble, carrying its unknown passenger through the winter darkness, while the patient horses find their way home. You enter a square where winter reveals the city's divisions with unusual clarity. On one side, tall houses stand behind iron railings. Their windows glow through thick curtains, and servants move through bright rooms carrying trays, coal scuttles, and folded linen. On the other side, narrow entrances descend towards cellars where families crowd close to small fires and count each piece of fuel. Snow falls on both sides of the street. It covers polished steps and broken paving with the same quiet patience. Yet the cold does not visit every household equally. For some, winter means heavier blankets, warm meals, and an extra log upon the fire. For others, it means choosing whether limited money should purchase food, rent, candles, or coal. You pass a grand doorway beneath a stone canopy. A servant brushes snow from the steps before it can harden. His coat is neat, though too light for the weather. He works quickly with a stiff broom, clearing a path from the entrance to the waiting carriage. Inside, a chandelier shines above the hall. You catch a glimpse of patterned carpet, framed portraits, and a fire burning in a large grate. A woman crosses the room in a dark silk dress. She carries no shawl. The house is warm enough that winter has been reduced to scenery beyond the glass. A few streets away, another woman sits beside a weak flame. Her room lies below street level. Frost gathers at the lower corner of the window, and dampness stains the wall. Two children share a blanket near the hearth while she mends a shirt by candlelight. She pushes the needle through coarse cloth. Her fingers move steadily despite the cold. The finished garment may belong to a customer, an employer, or someone in the household. Payment for sewing is often small, and work continues late because every completed piece matters. Public reports from the middle of the 19th century record severe overcrowding and poverty in parts of Edinburgh. Wealthy districts display broad streets and elegant homes, while poorer families may occupy single rooms in older buildings with limited water, ventilation, and sanitation. The contrast is not hidden, it stands within walking distance. You hear music from the larger house. A piano plays a slow melody. Several voices join in song, gentle and well-trained. The sound drifts across the square and enters the colder street. Near the cellar window, one child raises his head to listen. He cannot see the instrument or the people around it. He hears only the tune passing through stone, snow, and distance. For a moment, music belongs to anyone within reach of the air. Then a cart rattles past and covers the final notes. You continue beside a row of lodging rooms where labourers return from work. Their boots are wet, their hands are cracked. One man carries a small sack of coal over his shoulder. Another holds a wrapped loaf beneath his coat. They speak quietly about wages, a day lost to illness, weather, or injury may mean less food at the end of the week. Savings is difficult when rent arrives with perfect punctuality and work does not. At a corner, a charitable soup kitchen remains open. Steam clouds the doorway. A line of people waits with bowls, cups, or small covered pots. Some avoid meeting one another's eyes. Others speak with familiar ease, having stood in the same line many times. A volunteer fills each container from a large iron pot. The soup is thin but hot. Barley, onions, and small pieces of vegetable move beneath the surface. The smell draws people closer. One curious footnote appears in the language of respectability. Charitable visitors sometimes judge the poor by the cleanliness of a room, the condition of clothing, or the manner in which assistance is requested. A family might therefore hide a cracked cup, straighten a blanket, or borrow a better chair before an inspection. Poverty is hard enough without also being required to look well organized. You watch a mother receive 2 portions. She thanks the volunteer and carefully covers the pot with cloth. One child holds her hand, another walks close behind, staring at the steam. A gentleman in a fine coat crosses the street. He notices the line, pauses, and places several coins into a collection box. The gesture may be sincere. It may also be brief enough to protect him from learning anyone's name. Charity provides relief, but it rarely changes the structure that creates need. Some organizations offer food, clothing, fuel, schooling, or religious instruction. Parish assistance supports certain households. Private donors fund shelters and missions, yet aid may carry rules, judgment, or conditions that make recipients feel watched rather than welcomed. Arguments split along several lines when historians examine Victorian charity. Some view it as an important form of community responsibility in an age before broad public welfare. Others argue that it often treated poverty as a personal moral failure instead of the result of low wages, insecure work, illness, housing costs, and unequal power. The evidence supports compassion, control, and contradiction at the same time. You turn into a district of elegant terraces. The pavement is cleaner here. Carriages stand beneath lamps, and household windows reveal dining rooms where silver reflects the candlelight. Servants move silently behind seated guests. A formal dinner unfolds behind one pane. Plates are changed. Wine is poured. A roasted bird occupies the center of the table. Conversation appears relaxed, though the household labor behind the meal is hidden below stairs. In the kitchen, cooks, maids, and footmen work in heavy heat. They carry dishes, wash pans, polish serving pieces, and prepare the next course. Their employers experience luxury, but servants create it through long hours and precise attention. Class follows people indoors. It determines which staircase they use, which room they enter, what clothing they wear, when they eat, and whether they may sit. A servant may spend the evening surrounded by warmth and food while possessing little time or comfort of her own. You pass the rear entrance. A kitchen maid steps outside with a bucket of ashes. Her face is flushed from the range. Snow lands on her hair and melts instantly. For several seconds, she stands still. The cold air seems to refresh her. She looks upward at the sky, breathing deeply before returning to the kitchen. That brief pause may be the only private moment of her evening. Farther along, a man sleeps beneath an archway with newspapers tucked inside his coat. His cap covers part of his face. Beside him rests a wooden box containing brushes and polish, tools for work that may return with the morning. A constable approaches. He bends, speaks quietly, and touches the man's shoulder. The sleeper wakes slowly. After a short exchange, he gathers his box and moves toward a sheltered passage. There is no comfortable place for him to go. Snow continues falling upon the square, smoothing the marks left by carriage wheels, servants' shoes, children's feet, and the long queue beside the soup pot. The city appears calm beneath its white covering, yet warmth remains unevenly distributed behind the walls. Some rooms are filled with music and firelight. Others depend upon a single candle, a borrowed blanket, and a bowl carried carefully through the cold. You walk on with the knowledge that winter does not create inequalities. It simply makes it harder to ignore. A brass plate beside a dark doorway bears the name of a physician. The letters catch the lamplight while snow gathers along the lower edge. Inside, a narrow passage leads toward a waiting room where several people sit beneath the faint smell of vinegar, damp wool, and medicinal herbs. You step quietly through the entrance. A small fire burns in the grate, but the room remains cool. Chairs line the walls. A table holds old newspapers, a cracked water jug, and a jar containing dried leaves. No one speaks above a murmur. A man near the window coughs into a handkerchief. Across from him, a mother holds a sleeping child against her chest. The child's face is flushed, and one small hand rests outside the blanket. An elderly woman sits beside the fire with both hands wrapped around a warm cup. Winter brings more than discomfort. Cold rooms, poor food, crowded housing, smoke, dampness, and close contact create conditions in which illness spreads easily. Coughs linger. Fevers move through families. Weak lungs suffer in polluted air. A minor sickness may become serious when rest. Warmth and nourishment are scarce. Records confirm that Edinburgh is already famous for medical teaching by 1854. Its university, hospitals, private schools, and surgical traditions attract students from Britain and beyond. The city produces respected physicians and bold new ideas. Though knowledge remains incomplete and treatment can vary greatly from one practitioner to another, the physician appears at the inner door. He's a tall man with silver at his temples and a dark coat buttoned neatly to the throat. He calls the next name, and the mother rises with the sleeping child. They disappear into the consulting room. You hear the low rhythm of questions through the wall. How long has the fever lasted? Has the child eaten? Is there pain in the chest? Is anyone else ill in the household? Diagnosis depends heavily upon observation. The doctor studies the skin, tongue, eyes, breathing, pulse, and general condition. He listens closely to the chest, perhaps using a wooden listening tube. He asks about sleep, appetite, stools, pain, work, housing, and family history. There are no modern scans or rapid laboratory tests. The body must tell its story through signs, sounds, smells, and the patient's memory. A curious footnote concerns the taste of medicine. Many remedies are so bitter that doctors or apothecaries mix them with syrup, honey, wine, or strongly flavoured water. Some patients judge effectiveness by unpleasantness. If a treatment tastes dreadful, it must surely be powerful. This is not reliable science, but it is an impressively stubborn form of optimism. The mother returns carrying a folded paper. The physician has written instructions for a mixture to be prepared by an apothecary. He has also advised rest, warmth, and broth, 3 recommendations that become difficult when a household lacks money, space, or fuel. She thanks him softly. Her expression holds relief and worry in equal measure. An assistant calls the elderly woman next. She rises slowly, leaning on a stick. Her complaint is pain in the joints, made worse by cold and damp weather. The doctor may suggest warmth, liniment, gentle movement, or one of several medicines intended to calm inflammation and discomfort. Some remedies help, others do little. A few may cause more harm than the illness itself. Medical practice in this period stands between old traditions and emerging scientific methods. Doctors use familiar treatments such as purging, blood removal, blistering, tonics, opiates, and herbal mixtures. At the same time, new ideas about anatomy, public health, statistics, and disease patterns are changing how illness is understood. No agreement has been reached among historians about how rapidly ordinary patients benefited from these changes. Some argue that professional training and hospital practice steadily improved care. Others emphasize that many treatments remained ineffective. Painful, expensive, or dangerous, progress exists, but it arrives unevenly and rarely announces itself with perfect certainty. You leave the waiting room and cross toward an apothecary shop. Its window glows green and amber through rows of glass bottles. Ceramic jars stand behind the counter, labelled in careful handwriting. Drawers fill the walls from floor to ceiling. The apothecary works beneath a bright lamp. He weighs a powder on a small balance, adds it to a mortar, and grinds it with a stone pestle. The motion is slow and particular. Each turn produces a soft scraping sound. Shelves hold dried roots, bark, oils, salts, syrups, ointments, and mineral compounds. Some substances are useful, some are doubtful. Some are extremely strong and require careful handling. The difference between medicine and poison may depend upon dose, preparation, and judgment. A customer requests a cough mixture. The apothecary pours dark liquid into a small bottle and seals it with a cork. He ties a paper label around the neck and explains how often it should be taken. The customer listens closely. Written instructions are not helpful to everyone. Since literacy varies and handwriting may test even the educated, spoken directions matter, especially when a remedy must be measured by spoonfuls. Beyond the shop, a hospital window shines through the snow. Inside, nurses and attendants move between beds. Sheets are changed, water is carried, fires are tended. Patients lie beneath blankets while footsteps echo along the ward. Hospital care is not always sought willingly. Some people fear infection, surgery, cost, or loss of independence. Others depend upon hospitals when home care becomes impossible. The poor may enter charitable institutions, while wealthier patients are often treated in private rooms or at home. You imagine a surgeon washing his instruments in a basin. The understanding of infection is still developing. Cleanliness is valued, but the full role of invisible organisms in disease is not yet accepted. Instruments, hands, clothing, and rooms may carry danger without anyone recognizing the exact cause. Surgery remains frightening. Pain relief has improved since the introduction of anesthetic methods in the previous decade, allowing operations that would once have been nearly unbearable. Yet anesthesia itself carries risks, and infection after surgery remains a serious threat. One fringe streak concerns patients who insist upon keeping personal charms beneath their pillows while receiving formal treatment. A ribbon, coin, Bible verse, herb bundle, or family token may offer comfort alongside medicine. Physicians may dismiss such objects, tolerate them, or quietly understand that hope has its own practical value. You walk past a public notice about cleanliness and drainage. City authorities increasingly connect poor sanitation with sickness. Even when the precise causes remain debated, officials inspect water sources. Crowded housing, refuse, and foul air, reformers call for better sewers, cleaner streets, and improved ventilation. Their efforts face cost resistance and politics. Landlords may avoid repairs. Residents may distrust inspectors. Officials may argue over responsibility. Meanwhile, illness moves more quickly than committees. A bell sounds inside the hospital. A nurse crosses a lit window carrying folded cloth. Another figure follows with a basin. Their shadows pass over the frosted glass and disappear. The snow muffles the street. You think of the physician listening to a child's chest, the apothecary measuring powder, the nurse lifting a fevered head, and the family deciding whether another bucket of coal can be afforded. Medicine is not only knowledge, it is time, warmth, clean water, food, shelter, trust, and human attention in a city shaped by winter. Those quiet forms of care may matter as much as anything written in a doctor's book. The hospital lamp remains steady behind the falling snow. It shines through the darkness as a modest promise, imperfect but persistent, that someone is still awake beside the sick. A broad stone building rises beyond the snowy pavement, its tall windows glowing beneath rows of gas lamps. You approach slowly, drawn by the unusual brightness. While many homes have begun to darken, this place remains awake through the glass. You see shelves, desks, maps, instruments, and figures bent over books. The winter night may be deep, but study continues with stubborn energy. The entrance door is heavy. You push against it and step into a hall where warmth meets you in a dry wave. Wet coats hang from pegs. Melted snow gathers beneath boots. The air smells of leather bindings, ink, dust, lamp smoke, and wool drying near iron pipes. A porter sits behind a wooden desk and looks up from a newspaper, studies you for a moment, and gives a small nod. His expression suggests that knowledge is welcome, provided it wipes its feet. You continue toward a reading room. Green-shaded lamps stand across long tables, creating quiet pools of light. Students sit with notebooks open before them. Some copy passages carefully. Others stare at a single page as though patient disappointment might force it to explain itself. Records confirm that Edinburgh holds an important place in 19th century education. Its university, medical schools, legal institutions, libraries, and learned societies attract students, teachers, writers, physicians, ministers, and natural philosophers. The city has long cultivated a reputation for serious thought, though serious thought often requires a generous supply of candles, coffee, and uncomfortable chairs. A young man turns a page. His fingers are stained with ink. A stack of medical texts rises beside him, each volume marked with slips of paper. He reads a paragraph twice, makes a note, then presses both hands against his eyes. Across the table, another student sketches the shape of a bone. The drawing is precise, Every ridge and hollow receives attention. Beside the paper rests a small wooden model used for study. The student rotates it beneath the lamp, examining how shadow reveals structure. Education here depends upon observation as much as memory. Medical students attend lectures, study anatomy, visit hospital wards, and learn from experienced practitioners. Law students examine cases and arguments. Future ministers study scripture, history, language, and moral philosophy. Others pursue mathematics, geology, chemistry, literature, or the natural world. Each discipline offers its own method of becoming confused. Beyond the reading room, a lecture is still underway. You stand near the open door and listen. A professor speaks from a raised platform, his voice measured and confident. Behind him, a large board carries a diagram drawn in chalk. Eyes explaining the movement of heat. A metal rod rests above a small flame. Instruments are arranged across the table. Students lean forward as the professor describes conduction, expansion, and the behavior of matter under changing temperature. One assistant touches the wrong end of the rod. He withdraws his hand quickly. The professor pauses, then observes that the demonstration has become unusually persuasive. A ripple of restrained laughter passes through the room. A curious footnote concerns public lectures, which may attract people well beyond formal student circles. Citizens attend talks on astronomy, geology, invention, literature, travel, and public improvement. Some lectures are highly serious. Others include dramatic experiments, unusual specimens, or mechanical displays designed to keep the audience awake. Knowledge competes with entertainment, and entertainment does not fight fairly. You enter another chamber where members of a learned society are gathering. Older men remove gloves and settle into high-backed chairs. Papers are arranged on a central table. A secretary checks names in a book, and near the fireplace, two scholars are already disagreeing about the age of a rock formation. Their voices remain polite. Their eyebrows do not. One insists that certain layers must have formed slowly over immense periods. The other argues for a more recent and sudden process. Each man listens only long enough to prepare the next objection. The chairman taps the table. Conversation lowers. A speaker rises to present observations collected during a journey through the Scottish countryside. He describes exposed cliffs, mineral deposits, river valleys, and fossils found within stone. His listeners take notes, whisper, and occasionally shake their heads. Such discussions reflect a changing intellectual world, new evidence about the earth, life, industry, disease, and society challenges older explanations. Scholars compare measurements, specimens, records, and personal observations. They write papers, exchange letters, and argue in meeting rooms where the fire is never quite warm enough. No settled agreement exists over how quickly scientific ideas spread beyond universities and elite societies. Some historians emphasize newspapers, public lectures, museums, popular books, and conversation clubs that carried new knowledge into wider society. Others note that education, time, and access remained unequal, leaving many people distant from formal debate. Curiosity may be widespread, even when opportunity is not. You move toward the library. The room stretches upward through several levels of shelves. Ladders rest against dark wood. Brass rails shine beneath the lamps. Books fill nearly every visible space. A librarian crosses the floor carrying a pile of volumes. He walks with great care, not from reverence alone, but because dropping 6 heavy books upon one foot would interrupt the pursuit of wisdom. At a side desk, a woman copies lines from a borrowed text. Women face serious barriers within formal higher education during this period, yet many pursue learning through private study, family instruction, reading groups, lectures, correspondence, and social networks. Some write, teach, collect specimens, translate works, or contribute quietly to projects credited mainly to men. You notice the speed of her pen. She pauses only to refill the nib, then continues. Nearby, a cabinet displays shells, stones, preserved plants, and small animal bones. Each specimen bears a handwritten label. The collection is meant to impose order upon nature, though nature has contributed an impressive number of objects. One tiny drawer contains beetles arranged in rows. Their polished bodies reflect the gaslight in green and bronze. A student studies them through a magnifying lens, noting differences in wings, legs, and shape. Gaslighting has changed these evening rooms. It allows work to continue after sunset with greater brightness than ordinary candles provide, yet the lamps release heat and fumes. They may flicker, hiss, and leave the air heavy. A poorly ventilated room becomes tiring. No matter how noble the discussion, you feel the warmth near the ceiling. The windows are clouded. Several students loosen their collars. One opens a door for fresh air, and an older reader immediately complains about the draft. The door closes again. Learning has limits, and cold air is apparently one of them. In a legal chamber across the hall, two men examine a case file. They discuss property, testimony, obligation, and precedent. One speaks slowly, building each argument step by step. The other interrupts with questions designed to expose weak foundations. Their exchange is formal but intense. Law is shaped not only by written rules, but by interpretation. Words must be defined, motives must be weighed. Past judgments influence present decisions. The lamp between them burns with a steady blue-edged flame. You return to the main hall as a clock approaches the late hour. Books close one by one. Papers are gathered, pens are cleaned, chairs scrape gently across the floor. Students has put on coats still damp from snow. Some leave with confidence. Others carry the expression of people who have discovered that the more they learn, the larger ignorance becomes. Outside, the city waits in darkness. Inside, one professor remains at his desk, revising a page beneath the final lamp. He crosses out a sentence, rewrites it, and studies the result. The building grows quieter around him. Gaslight shines upon ink, glass, stone, and tired hands. Beyond the windows, snow continues to fall, while questions remain awake in Edinburgh, passing from mind to mind through the long winter night. The first bell reaches you as a low vibration beneath the wind. It rolls across the roofs with such depth that you feel it before you fully hear it. A second stroke follows, then another, each one spreading through the snowy air and fading slowly among chimneys, towers, and narrow streets. You stop beneath the shelter of a stone arch. The city seems to pause with you. Far above, a church tower rises through the darkness. Its upper windows are almost invisible, but the sound gives the structure a presence larger than sight. The bell speaks from within the night, marking time for people who may never look toward its source. A distant clock answers from another quarter. Its tune is lighter, more metallic. The two sounds overlap for a moment, creating an uneven harmony across the rooftops. One seems solemn, the other sounds faintly impatient, as though disagreeing about who has announced the hour correctly. In 1854, public clocks and church bells remain essential guides to daily life. Records show that many citizens depend upon bells to measure working hours. Worship, meetings, markets, curfews, and appointments. Personal watches exist, but they're not owned by everyone, and household clocks may be expensive or unreliable. The city itself therefore announces the passing hours. You listen as the final note diminishes. The sound does not vanish at once. It lingers against stone, crosses open ground, and enters courtyards through narrow gaps. A person lying awake beneath a poor roof hears the same stroke as a judge resting behind thick curtains. Time reaches every room, even when comfort does not. A door opens nearby. A night worker steps outside carrying a small lantern. He glances upward, counts the final bell strokes, and adjusts the scarf around his neck. His shift begins while most of the street prepares for deeper sleep. He walks toward a printing house where lamps still burn. Inside, presses may continue through the night. News, announcements, notices, and advertisements must be prepared for morning. Compositors arrange small metal letters by hand. Pressmen ink the forms, pull sheets, stack pages, and work beneath the constant smell of oil, paper, and hot metal. The bell gives them a shared measure. At another building, it tells a nurse when medicine should be given. In a stable, it reminds a groom to check an animal. In a kitchen, it marks how long dough has rested. In a guard room, it divides duty into watches. A single hour contains many different beginnings. You move into a small churchyard enclosed by an iron gate. Snow lies between the stones and gathers along carved names. Bare branches stretch above the wall, each twig carrying a white line. The tower bell hangs somewhere overhead. Its rope descends through the floors into a chamber below. When pulled, the rope sets a great weight in motion. Metal swings against metal, and the resulting sound travels much farther than the human hand that began it. A curious detail concerns the bell ringers themselves. Some develop elaborate methods for remembering complex patterns of sound. The work requires strength, rhythm, patience, and careful teamwork. An inexperienced ringer may discover that a moving rope has its own opinions and can lift a careless person from the floor with surprising enthusiasm. You imagine several ringers standing beneath the tower beams. Their breath clouds in the cold chamber. Boots shift upon worn boards. Hands tighten around thick ropes. At a signal, they pull in order, each person responsible for one voice within the greater pattern. The bells answer above them. Wooden frames tremble. Dust falls from rafters. The whole tower seems briefly alive. Not every bell carries the same meaning. Some announce worship, some mark weddings or funerals, some warn of fire or danger. Others celebrate public events. Citizens learn to distinguish tone, rhythm, and sequence, reading sound almost as they might read a notice posted upon a wall. Tonight, the measured strokes bring no alarm. They simply divide darkness into understandable portions. You cross beneath another tower where a clock face shines dimly through snow. The hands are difficult to see. Frost has gathered around the outer rim, and the lamp behind the dial gives the numbers a pale, ghostly glow. A man stands below, consulting his pocket watch, and looks at the tower, then at the watch, then back at the tower. His frown deepens. Either the public clock is wrong, his watch is wrong, or time has chosen a complicated evening. He taps the watch against his palm. This does not appear to improve the century. The difficulty is not unusual. Clocks may lose or gain minutes. Different districts may follow slightly different local habits. Railway travel and expanding communication are encouraging more consistent timekeeping, but complete uniformity is still developing. Scholars continue to disagree over how ordinary people experience this growing discipline of measured time. Some argue that factory bells, railway schedules, school hours, and public clocks created a stricter daily order. Others suggest that older habits based on daylight, weather, tasks, and custom remained powerful for decades. The change was real, but it did not enter every life at the same speed. You consider how differently the hour feels across the city. For a child, it may mean being sent back to bed after asking for water. For a servant, it may mean one final grate to clean. For a physician, it may mean another urgent call. For a printer, it may signal that several pages still remain unfinished. For you, it means the night has grown quieter. The streets contain fewer footsteps now. Window lamps disappear one at a time. Smoke continues rising, but voices have softened behind the walls. Another bell begins. This one is farther away, almost hidden beneath the wind. You count the strokes, though the final note becomes uncertain. Perhaps the snow has swallowed it. Perhaps your mind has begun to drift. A watchmaker lives above a nearby shop. Through a narrow window, you see him seated at a bench beneath a lamp. Tiny tools lie arranged before him. Several open clock cases reveal wheels, springs, and shining teeth. He lifts one mechanism toward his ear. The ticking is too faint for you to hear, but his expression changes when the rhythm steadies. He adjusts a screw, replaces a cover, and sets the clock beside several others. The room must be filled with small competing heartbeats. Each clock measures the same night, yet none sounds exactly alike. Below, snow gathers around the doorstep. No customer waits. The watchmaker continues because precision demands patience, and because tomorrow someone will arrive insisting that 3 lost minutes have caused a personal disaster. You walk toward a higher street. From there, several towers appear at once, dark shapes scattered across the city. Their bells do not ring together. One speaks, then another, and then a third carries the hour toward distant neighborhoods. The sequence feels almost conversational. Each tower lends its voice, and each silence makes room for the next. You rest one hand upon the cold railing. The notes pass above tenements, schools, workshops, hospitals, inns, and grand houses. They cross districts divided by wealth and purpose. They reach sleepers, workers, wanderers, and those who remain awake for reasons known only to themselves. The final bell sounds softer than the first. Its echo fades into the falling snow until you can no longer tell whether you hear metal, wind, or memory. The city settles around the measured hour, and beneath the towers, Edinburgh continues breathing in darkness, guided through the long winter night by voices of bronze that rise, travel, and slowly disappear. You return to the window and draw the curtain aside with both hands. The glass is cold enough to numb your fingertips through the fabric. Beyond it, Edinburgh lies beneath a fresh covering of snow, quieter now, softened into pale roofs, dark walls, and scattered points of light. The castle rises above everything, its outline broad and almost motionless against the cloudy sky. For a moment, it feels as though the fortress is floating. Mist gathers around the lower rock, hiding the streets that lead toward it. Only the upper walls and towers remain clearly visible. A few lamps burn near the defences, tiny against the scale of the stone. You place a candle on the sill. Its reflection appears in the uneven pane, so that a second flame seems to hover outside among the snow. The image trembles whenever the wick moves. Castle and candle share the glass, one immense and ancient, the other small enough to vanish beneath a breath. The room behind you has settled into near silence. Coal glows low in the grate. The bed waits beneath folded blankets. A stone bottle still holds a little warmth beneath the covers, yet you remain at the window, reluctant to surrender the view. A gust clears the mist. The steep face of Castle Rock emerges dark and severe. Snow rests in shallow shelves along the stone, revealing cracks and ledges that disappear in ordinary darkness. The fortress appears firmly joined to the hill, as though walls and rock were formed together. Historical records confirm that the castle has served many purposes across the centuries. It has been a royal residence, military stronghold, prison, treasury, and symbol of national power. By 1854, its military role remains visible, but its historical meaning is becoming equally important to visitors and residents who look upward from the city. You can understand why. The castle changes according to distance. From nearby streets, it feels heavy, defensive, and almost intimidating, from this warm room framed by curtains and snowfall. It becomes a landmark of endurance. Its harsher details fade. What remains is shape, height, and the sense of something standing firm through weather and time. A sentry crosses a lit section of wall, eyes no more than a moving shadow from where you stand. He pauses, turns, and continues along the path. Perhaps he is counting the minutes until relief. Perhaps he is enjoying the same snow that makes his duty unpleasant. The difference between romance and inconvenience is often a window pane. You see a majestic winter fortress and feels wet boots. A rather curious tradition surrounds the Great Cannon. Known for marking the hour, in later years, its daily firing becomes one of the most familiar sounds associated with the castle. Visitors may admire the ceremony, though nearby birds and anyone holding a cup at the wrong moment might find the experience less dignified. Tonight, no cannon breaks the stillness. The fortress communicates through light instead. A lamp appears within one upper window, then moves slowly across the opening. Someone passes behind a curtain or carries a lantern through a room. The light disappears, leaving the wall dark once more. You imagine the hidden interior. There are corridors where boots echo, storerooms smelling of wood and metal, barrack rooms with folded uniforms, offices containing ledgers, and cold stone chambers warmed by small fires. The castle seems like a single solid object from outside, yet within it are many separate rooms, duties, and private thoughts. One soldier writes a letter, another repairs a strap, a third sits beside a grate, pretending not to be tired. No building is only its outer walls. Below the fortress, the city stretches into shadow. Chimneys stand like dark reeds above white roofs. A few late lamps reveal upper windows where other wakeful people may also be looking out. You wonder how many eyes are turned toward the castle. A child may see a place of adventure. A servant may use it to judge the weather. A traveller may find direction from its outline. An older resident may barely notice it, having lived beneath its presence for decades. Scholars remain divided over when historic buildings begin to shift in public imagination from active instruments of power into treasured monuments. Some argue that military use and romantic memory can exist together for a long time. Others believe tourism, literature, art, and changing politics gradually soften the meaning of old fortresses. The castle before you seems to support both views at once. It is still guarded. It is also admired. Snow gathers more heavily upon the outer ledges. The walls grow paler along their upper edges, while the lower rock remains almost black. The contrast gives the fortress a sharper form. You can trace the rise of towers, rooflines, battlements, and steep slopes even as the storm thickens. A cloud passes low behind it. For several seconds, the castle becomes a silhouette against a faint silver background. The sight is so still that it resembles an engraving in an old book. Then smoke drifts across the scene and the image changes again. Your candle burns lower. A drop of wax slips down one side and hardens near the brass holder. You trim the wick carefully with small scissors from the table. The flame steadies and brightens. The gas gives a soft click. Cold outside and warmth inside place strain upon the pane. You step back instinctively, then smile at yourself. The window holds. You pull the curtain around your shoulders like a cloak and continue watching through the narrow opening. From somewhere below comes the final sound of a carriage. Its wheels move slowly across packed snow, then fade into another street. A door closes. A dog barks once and receives no answer. The city is withdrawing into sleep. The castle, however, remains visible. It does not sleep in the human sense. Guards change, fires are checked, gates remain secured. The walls continue their long watch whether anyone below remembers to look up or not. You rest your forehead lightly against the curtain. The fabric smells faintly of dust, coal smoke, and lavender. Beyond it, the snowy fortress seems both close enough to touch and impossibly distant. You allow your breathing to follow the quiet rhythm of the room. Inhale. The candle trembles. Exhale. The fire settles. The castle remains. There is comfort in that simple arrangement. A small room, a dim flame, a white city, and an old stronghold standing above the roofs. At last, you let the curtain fall almost closed. Only a narrow gap remains, preserving one final view through it. The castle appears as a dark shape resting beneath the snow, patient and watchful while the last lights of Edinburgh fade. You turn toward the bed. Behind you, the fortress continues to hold its place in the winter night, framed by glass, curtain, and silence, until even its towers seem to soften into sleep. You lower yourself onto the edge of the bed and feel the mattress settle beneath you. The room is dim now. Only the fire and one candle remain, each giving a different kind of light. The coals glow deep raw, Ed behind the grate, while the candle casts a narrow golden circle across the table, the washstand and the folded edge of the blanket. You remove the final layers of the deck. Your collar loosens. Your shirt no longer presses against your throat. Stockings are drawn free with slow relief, and your cold feet meet the warmed sheets beneath the cover. The stone bottle has done its work well. A pocket of heat waits near the center of the bed. You shift it carefully toward the foot, then slide beneath the wool blanket and pull it up toward your shoulders. The fabric is heavy. Its weight feels reassuring, almost like hand resting gently across the body. The wool is rough near your chin, but beneath it the linen sheet is cool and smooth. For several moments you adjust the layers, seeking the exact arrangement that keeps the warmth in without trapping one foot in an unreasonable corner. Sleep has its engineering problems. You reach toward the bedside table and trim the candle flame. The room darkens slightly. Shadows grow softer. The chair becomes a quiet shape near the hearth. The washstand fades into the wall. The curtains form a dark frame around the hidden window. A small clock ticks somewhere in the building. Its sound is too distant to measure clearly, yet regular enough to guide your breathing. Each faint beat arrives, pauses, and gives way to the next. In Victorian households, bedtime routines often follow the limits of light, fuel, work, and social custom. Records confirm that many people retire earlier during winter, especially when candles and coal must be conserved. Wealthier homes may remain brightly lit into the night, but modest households often allow darkness to close the day. You understand the attraction. Once the candle is lowered, nothing demands attention. There is no glowing screen beside the bed. No electric light waits at the touch of a switch. No message arrives from a distant acquaintance who has suddenly remembered a question that could easily survive until morning. The night is allowed to be night. You place the candle snuffer over the flame. A thin curl of smoke rises from the wick. Its scent joins the coal, wool, lavender, and cold air of the room. Darkness settles gently rather than suddenly, because the fire still gives enough light to reveal the nearest shapes. You lie back. The pillow is firm beneath your head. It does not surrender completely, but holds your neck at a dignified angle. The mattress presses unevenly beneath your shoulders and hips, reminding you that horsehair has opinions. Oddly enough, some people believe that particular sleeping positions reveal character. Lying on the back may be associated with confidence, while curling tightly may suggest caution or anxiety. Such ideas appear in advice books and popular discussion, though the bed itself is usually more concerned with drafts than personality. You turn onto one side. The blanket shifts with a dry rustle. A faint sound reaches the room from outdoors. Snow slides from a roof and lands in the courtyard below with the soft, heavy fall. Then the silence returns. Your breathing slows. The first images of sleep begin to gather at the edge of thought. They are not yet dreams, only loose impressions. A lantern moving through snow, a horse lowering its head, a row of dark rooftops, a hand drawing a curtain. The mind arranges the day without asking permission. You close your eyes fully. The room remains present through touch and sound. Warmth rests around your legs, cooler air brushes your face. The pillow smells faintly of soap. The fire gives an occasional quiet snap as coal settles inward. Somewhere in the corridor a door opens. Footsteps pass slowly and stop near the staircase. A candle flame glows briefly beneath your door, then moves away. The house returns to darkness. You imagine the many sleepers around you. A merchant dreams of figures in a ledger that refuse to balance. A servant dreams of a bell that rings each time she begins to rest. A child dreams that the snowy streets have become rivers of white sugar. A soldier dreams of warm fields far from stone walls. Dreams cross class, rank, and occupation with greater freedom than any carriage. Scholars remain uncertain about how people in the 19th century understood dreams in everyday life. Some viewed them as fragments of memory, bodily disturbance, or emotional pressure. Others attach spiritual, moral, or prophetic meaning to them. Private diaries suggest that many people moved easily between several explanations, accepting mystery where certainty was unavailable. Your own thoughts begin to loosen. The walls of the room seem farther away. The ticking clock grows softer. The firelight behind your eyelids becomes a reddish glow, like sunset seen through closed curtains. You are walking again, though your body does not move. The city appears beneath a sky filled with slow white stars. Snow falls upward from the roofs. Chimneys stand upside down in the clouds. The castle rests not upon rock, but upon a great dark ship drifting above the town. No one finds this unusual. A watchman opens a door in the sky and invites the moon inside to warm itself. You follow a narrow road that becomes a staircase, then a bridge, then the spine of an enormous sleeping book. Every step turns one page. Each page carries a quiet picture of Edinburgh, but the images change before you can study them. A baker lifts a loaf large enough to shelter a family. A lamplighter carries a flame in his pocket. A horse speaks politely to a driver about road conditions. Dreams improve public conversation. You move without effort. The snow makes no sound beneath your feet. Windows glow along the street, yet no walls surround them. Families sit beside suspended hearths while chairs float gently around the flames. The scene feels strange but safe. A clock tower bends toward you and whispers the hour. Though no words are spoken, you understand anyway. The night is deep, and nothing more is required. Your body shifts beneath the blanket. The dream changes. You stand in a vast hall lined with curtains. Each curtain opens onto a different winter evening. Behind one, people dance beneath chandeliers. Behind another, a woman mends a coat beside a weak face. Behind a third, students argue beneath gaslight while snow fills the room without melting. You pass each opening without entering. The hall grows quieter. At its end waits a simple wooden bed covered in white linen. Above it hangs no painting, no mirror, and no clock. Only a small branch rests on the pillow, carrying 3 dark leaves. You reach toward it. The branch becomes a feather. The feather becomes smoke. The smoke becomes the sound of wind against the window. Your eyes open for a moment. The room is almost completely dark. The fire has lowered to a dull glow. The curtain moves slightly at the edge, touched by a hidden draft. Nothing has changed. You listen until the room feels familiar again. Then your eyes close. Sleep returns more deeply now, no longer filled with bright scenes. Thought becomes slower, softer, and less distinct. Names disappear, streets lose their shape. The city reduces itself to warmth, weight, and distant sound. Your hand rests loosely upon the blanket. Your breathing lengthens. Outside, snow continues to gather on stone, glass, steps, and roofs. Inside, the bed holds a small protected space where the body no longer needs to walk, work, speak, choose, or understand. The clock ticks on without your attention. The coals dim, and you drift farther into the quiet Victorian night, carried by dreams too gentle to remember and too peaceful to disturb. A pale brightness gathers behind the curtains. It arrives so gradually that you do not wake at once. The room first changes from black to deep grey, then from grey to the faint silver of winter morning. Shapes return without hurry. The chair emerges beside the hearth. The washstand appears against the wall. The ceiling becomes visible above you. You remain beneath the blankets. The fire has gone out, leaving a shallow bed of ash and a few dark coals. Cold air rests across your face, while the warmth stored beneath the wool still holds around your body. One foot has escaped the covers during the night and now reports this mistake with admirable urgency. You draw it back inside. For several quiet breaths, you listen to the building awaken. A pipe knocks within the wall, floorboards creak overhead. A servant descends the staircase carrying an empty coal scuttle. From somewhere below comes the dull clang of a range being opened and cleaned. The household morning begins with fire. Ash must be removed before fresh coal is laid. Kindling must catch. Water must be heated. Kettles, pans, and heavy iron surfaces must be prepared before breakfast can appear. You hear a poker scrape inside the kitchen grate. A door opens into the courtyard. Someone steps outside, pauses at the depth of the snow, and releases a sigh that needs no translation. You sit up slowly. The air beyond the blanket is sharp. Your breath becomes visible for a moment. You reach for your clothes, which lie folded on the chair, and bring them beneath the covers to warm them before dressing. This small strategy requires patience. A cold shirt against warm skin would be an unnecessarily dramatic beginning to the day. You hold the fabric close until it loses its winter stiffness. Then dress beneath the blanket with movements that are neither graceful nor witnessed. Your boots wait near the hearth. The leather is dry now, though still cool. You pull them on, fasten your clothing, and stand up. The floor chills your feet through the soles. At the window, the curtains feel heavy in your hands. You draw them apart. Morning enters the room. The city beyond the glass has been transformed. Roofs, ledges, courtyards, and streets are covered beneath smooth white layers. Chimneys rise from the snow like dark towers, their smoke climbing almost straight upward through the calm air. The clouds have thinned. A narrow band of pale gold rests above the eastern horizon. It touches the highest roofs first, giving each edge a delicate line of light. The castle remains visible above the city. Its walls are clearer than they were during the night. Snow outlines the battlements and lies across the upper slopes of the rock. The fortress no longer floats in darkness. It stands solidly in morning air, cold, severe, and quietly magnificent. A sentry moves along one wall. His figure appears tiny against the stone. Daylight reveals the distance between you more honestly, but it also reveals details hidden by night. You see the steep fall of the rock. You see roofs pressed closely beneath it. You see smoke spreading over the old town, carrying the first evidence of breakfast fires. Records confirm that Edinburgh in 1854 begins each winter day through an enormous amount of manual labour. Coal is carried, grates are cleaned, water is drawn, horses are fed, streets are cleared, and shops are opened, long before many residents sit down to eat. Servants, labourers, stable workers, bakers, and street cleaners have already been active for hours. A man enters the courtyard with a shovel. He clears a path from the rear door to the pump. Each load of snow lands beside the wall, building a low ridge. A maid follows with 2 buckets, placing her feet carefully in the newly opened track. The pump handle resists her first attempt. She presses down again. Water finally splashes into the bucket. Some spills across the stones and begins freezing at once. Morning rewards effort with additional problems. You open the window slightly. The latch is stiff and the frame protests with a dry crack. A blade of cold air slips into the room, carrying the scents of coal smoke, bread, frost, and wet timber. The city sounds different in daylight. Voices are clearer. Wheels move more confidently. Shovels scrape stone. A distant horse stamps inside a yard somewhere. A shopkeeper lifts a shutter and secures it with a hook. A bell marks the hour. Its tone spreads through the clean morning air without the softness of falling snow. Another tower answers. Soon the city is measured again by the metal voices. In the street below, a baker's boy carries a basket beneath a cloth. Steam rises faintly from the covering. He walks quickly, leaving a chain of footprints behind him. At one doorway, a servant waits with coins already counted in her hand. The exchange takes only a moment. A loaf passes inside. The boy continues toward the next house. Oddly enough, fresh snow gives children opportunities that adults often regard as interruption. A small boy in the courtyard rolls a lump between his hands while his older sister tells him to hurry. He places the snow upon a wall, adds 2 pebbles for eyes, and creates a tiny face before running after her. His creation will probably survive longer than his punctuality. Across the rooftops, birds begin to move. Several rooks gather near a chimney where warmth has melted the snow. They hop along the edge, inspect the opening, and complain loudly when smoke rises beneath them. One bird lifts away, the others follow, circling above the white roofs before settling upon a church tower. You close the window and turn toward the room. A tray has been placed outside the door. You bring it inside and find porridge, bread, butter, and a pot of tea. The porridge releases a warm cloud when you lift the cover. You sit beside the window. The first spoonful is plain, hot, and deeply welcome. A little salt sharpens the taste. Tea warms your hands through the cup. Below, more doors open. A clerk steps into the street with papers beneath his coat. A woman shakes a small rug over a railing. 2 labourers carry tools uphill, leaning forward against the slope. The snow does not stop the city. It changes the pace, exposes weakness, and demands more effort. But work continues. People clear thresholds, test roads, mend fires, and resume the duties waiting for them. Historians remain divided over how residents experience severe winter weather in growing cities. Some accounts emphasize fellowship, shared labor, and the beauty of transformed streets. Others focus upon hunger, dangerous travel, illness, and lost wages. No single description contains the whole morning because wonder and hardship often look through neighbouring windows. The sunlight strengthens. It touches the castle walls and spreads downward across the rock. Upper windows brighten. Ice along the roofs begins to shine. The room no longer feels like a refuge from darkness. It has become a place from which you watch the world begin again. You finish the tea. The empty cup rests warmly between your palms. Smoke rises from hundreds of chimneys, joining above the city in a broad grey veil. Beneath it, Edinburgh stirs through snow and cold, carrying its burdens into another day. And now the long night loosens its hold. Your breathing settles into an easy rhythm as morning light moves gently across the room. The white rooftops grow softer in your sight, and the distant castle seems less like a fortress than a quiet guardian resting above the waking streets. As this story closes, Carry with you the warmth of the small fire, the sound of bells across snow, and the patient courage of ordinary people beginning their day. Tell us in the comments which moment stayed with you most. Perhaps it was the castle beneath the storm, the silent alleys, the glowing shops, or the simple comfort of a warm bed. Then let the next story on the channel guide you toward another distant place and another peaceful night. Rest easily now. Let the chimneys fade. Let the footsteps soften, and let the morning drift beyond your thoughts until only calm remains. Blessings to you and your family.